What's up, y'all? It's TTC, aka the ThunderConductor. We back with another YouTube video and Twitch stream. If you're on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And if you're on Twitch, make sure you follow and ring the bell. We do this twice a week on YouTube and once a week on Twitch, so let's get right into it. I got a question for y'all. What is the most powerful 3-mana commander in the cEDH format? We gonna have some people saying Najeela. Come on, all day, every day. Infinite Combat Steph, Breach, Ad Nauseam, Thassus. Come on now, it's the OG 3-mana commander with 5 colors. Some people are more into the new school. Sisay Weatherlight Captain. Oh my gosh, I cannot say the number of times my homies have whooped my tail with this deck. It is always so explosive with Dockside and other mana generators that the format has to offer. Some people would say, hey, the best 3-mana commander is already in the best deck. Timna of the Blue Far pair combo. Like, it is by far, it's very, very, very few times where people remember, like, yo, this Timna is drawing him an extra 3 cards per turn. Like, what the heck? And I have to say, by far, though all of these commanders are powerful and they all been killing the tournament scene, I gotta say right now, my favorite 3-mana commander has to be Geralf the Fleshwright. I kid you not, one of my homies brought this to me and I'm looking at this like, what the heck? Like mono blue? You have all these 5 color options, but you saying mono blue. And apparently he's been killing in the scene. And he got me excited about it. And I hope he gets to show y'all up. So I want to take a sec to invite Ben, aka Holden Pryo, to the chat. How you feeling, brother?
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I'm feeling great. Really happy to be here. Excited.
Cool. I'm excited too, brother. Well, let's get right into it, bro. Like you talking big about this Geralf the Fleshlight, so I really want to hear more about it. But first, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell the people how you got into cEDH and how you got to this amazing commander, Geralf the Fleshlight.
Sure. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. I think it's pretty well slept on. But yeah, as far as cEDH goes, it's funny. I actually only started into cEDH or Commander at all in January of 2023. So, it's a pretty short amount of time. But as far as Magic goes, I've been playing Magic since the turn of the millennia. So from 1999, 2000, that's when I actually got introduced into Magic.
Okay.
I started playing a lot of the, I remember opening 7th edition packs. I remember opening Judgment and Invasion Block. And then, of course, when Affinity came out in Mirrodin, my mind was blown, and all of our buddies, we started playing Extended and 1.5 for all you old heads out there. So, yeah, I am deep in Magic, deep.
Man,
put it in my veins, baby.
I hear, brother. So, after playing Magic for such a long time, what got you into Commander and then especially into cEDH? Like, what was that transition looking like?
It's funny. I talked a lot of trash on Commander for a very, very long time. I'm not gonna lie. I was the person in the card shop that I'd be like saying things like, "Oh, are you gonna play real Magic, or are you gonna play this, group hug format or whatever?" And honestly, it was just contempt prior to investigation. I was a little ignorant to what was going on. But what I will say is, I don't play casual Commander. I don't even really know how you play casual Commander. There's a bunch of memes. Every deck is a 7. I don't know. Blah blah blah. And green goes bird, something or other. I don't know. But what I do know is that I like competition when it comes to Magic.
Yes.
I like jamming really cool brews. I like to, and all my old formats that I was playing up to this, I played some vintage, but I've played a lot of Legacy, a lot of Modern. When Pioneer came out, I was deep in that for a while until they banned my Sweetheart Nexus of Fate. So, for me, I've really just been like someone who liked to sit down across from my opponent, put a spell on the stack, have them stare at me and say, "Can I read that?" There's nothing better.
Oh man. Oh, I hear you. I definitely hear you there. Oh my gosh. So what I'm hearing from you is that after removing the veil from the eyes, was like, okay, this may be something here. The catalog of cards that Commander, especially cEDH, had to offer was really what pulled you to the format.
100%. I mean, when the question is asked, okay, well, what can I play? What can I not play? What's banned? And the answer is yes. Like, let's go. You just gave me the opportunity. open up the nitrous, we're hitting the gas pedal, like it's happening, And what's funny is when I first got into cEDH, because I had all this big collection of cards, random cards, whatever. When I first got into cEDH, I didn't own a Cyclonic Rift, just full stop. Like I didn't own some of these cards that were like kind of format warping staples, and it was really hard for me to wrap my head around why are these things good. And it was really cool. Someone in our local play group, I want to say it was a buddy of ours named Nick or Chip, I can't really remember, but one of these guys kind of, when I started playing with them, mentioned, hey, this isn't 1v1, and it's also not like 1v3, it's really 1v1 v1 v1, like, so if you've got 1-for-1 interaction, that's bad. If you've even got 2-for-1 interaction, that's really not quite up to par. And so there were a lot of these heuristics from playing Modern, from playing Legacy, and from doing decent in those formats and putting up some decent local results. I see some people in the chat talking about some brews that I've had in the past with other formats and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I did pretty well in some of those other areas. But boy, was this a brand new experience. And so I was really excited about the opportunity of playing all the cool cards. One thing I've never really been super into is this kind of like hero complex with my commander. Like, oh, this commander I identify with, because I feel so cool. Like this is, who I am. And for me, it's no, I play to win. And whatever that looks like. So.
Well, I definitely hear you there. Well, I mean, most people who say they play to win they immediately run to the EDH top 16. What's the best commander? Oh, I'm going to play Kennen. I'm going to play Blue Farm, I'm gonna play Sisay, and they'll just run with that and then become competent at that. But you're a brewer at heart as well, and with this recent set that came out this year, along with the other 42 sets that came out, we're not going to talk about that, but we are going to talk about Outlaws of Thunder Junction just came out, and you've been killing it in the tournament scene with this Geralf the Fleshwright. So what brought you to this commander when you talk about saying you want to play to win, but you also have this brewer's heart, like that you just love the brew? So talk to me about that, brother.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, so basically I don't play green. So that's like just a stipulation that I have, it's like how they do like draft stipulation for Vintage Cube. It's like, okay, man, try to build a deck around artifacts. For me, it's just a life stipulation. Never play green. Do anything you can to not play green if you can avoid it. And it's a dumb thing. I'm sure it stopped me from playing a lot of good decks, and I know that, but it's okay.
Yeah.
And it's just because green is bad and the cards are bad and nobody likes it. But no, in all seriousness,
there's some green mages you pissing off in the Japanese.
Yeah, go by me, man.
Just evolution got me the Thassa's Oracle plenty of times, or the Grand Demise.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, actually. All my local buddies will attest to this, that I'm always like, green cards are bad, but man, I love Neoform and Eldritch Evolution. If there's any way I could play those two specific cards.
Oh, please, not even to mention Culling Ritual as well, bro. Another banger. Just like them, it's the mono green cards are a little tough, but it's them green black, green blue, green red, like just these cards they splash green into it, just like, yo, what the fuck were they doing with this one? So I definitely hear you.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, not to mention all the busted Simic cards, right? You got Oko, Uro, Kinnan, this new bird
Nadu,
that's
bro.
Probably just some sort of CIA informant. So all these cards are just out of here, like they're nuts. So, but anyways, to answer your question, for me, the reason why I was drawn to this is because I like the limitation. I like the restriction of I can't just play every good card that's out there.
Yes.
I want something that really restricts me. And then back to that original point of the whole reason why I love Magic in the first place is I like the mind game, the mental logic problem, almost like figuring out a new puzzle to solve.
Yes.
And so because of that, when's the last time that you saw a deck that was really leaning on Shrieking Drake and all the Shrieking Drake effects? When's the last time that you saw a deck that got to play all the cards with Cypher in it, like the Hidden Strings and Arcane Heist and these other cards? And when's the last time that you played a deck that was like unironically playing cantrips like Preordain and Ponder and Brainstorm and Consider and in cEDH, right? So those were exciting ideas for me. And I'm not gonna lie, when I first looked at it, I did brew up a bunch of really dumb zombie tribal shenanigans that was just garbage, but those were, you gotta have rough drafts in order to have a finished paper. And so that's kind of we slowly tuned and tuned and tuned and tuned, and I kept bringing it to locals, and I kept hyping everybody up locally about it, and they would be like, okay, I don't see it, and then eventually it was like, okay, I'm starting to see it, man, like you're doing the thing,
Yep.
it's crazy when you put 150 power zombies on board in a single turn, and you started with only an island in play, and they're like, yeah, this is something.
Exactly.
It's that was what drew me to it. I mean, anytime something doesn't have a restriction either, this one you can only do on your turn. But anytime it doesn't have a number of times per turn restriction,
oh yeah,
that's just Wizards of the Coast saying, cool, we cut the governor, baby, rev the engine. So, I'm all about it.
I definitely hear you there, brother. So, man, like you've really hyped him up. So I want to get straight into it. But before we do, I just want to say to everybody, if you're looking for more ways to support the show, we have a plethora. Everything from starting off with our ThunderConductor merch is the smoothest, softest, cleanest merch on this side of the internet. Next, we have our ThunderConductor proxies. It is my way to increase access to this amazing format we call cEDH, and it's fun to do. We also have our Patreon where you can join all our amazing patrons, like our Mono Red patron tier. Wavy Hashira, Nathan Stridham, The Prater, Sir Trekkie, and Brad Singley. But if that's not your thing and you just want to join the community, check us out on Discord. Free community to join. We brew, we talk about amazing things, and we have like amazing people like our man Holden here right in there. And last but not least, we say to AT, I'm not much for the Patreon, the merch, the proxy, none of that. I just want to say one time for the fun time. I love what you do and I will support you. Don't even worry about it. Check the link in the bio. You can buy me a coffee. It keeps me up and keeps the lights on. But with that said, let's get straight into it. Geralf the Fleshwright is a 2/3 for 2 in the blue. And it says whenever you cast a spell during your turn, other than the first spell this turn, create a 2/2 blue and black zombie rogue creature token. That's unique. Whenever a zombie enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it for each zombie that entered the battlefield under your control this turn. So I gotta ask, there's no card advantage in the command zone. I'm seeing the potential for an outlet for a command zone just on the surface level. But like, tell me what I'm missing, brother. Talk to me. What am I missing, brother? Talk to me.
I'll just say off the bat, that's how a lot of people, I think, feel. And honestly, that is really one of the biggest advantages of playing this deck, is that you read it and you're like, okay, you're going to make a bunch of dudes, but they don't fly. They don't do anything the turn they come into play. It only happens on your turn. Like, it's very telegraphed, right? And it seems very obvious, the game plan of the pilot. Okay. And as a result, it really a lot of times lulls opponents into a false sense of security. Like, there's no way you can actually go off and win with just this one card. And the one card isn't, we're not talking like breach or something, like, oh, you can't just win with just a breach. It's like, yeah, you can, but this is like, you can't just win with a preordain, right? And it's like, well, we'll see, and a big part of this is the text on this card is eerily similar to a card that I noticed happens to be restricted in the literal most hands down broken and unrestricted format of all of Magic's history, which is Vintage. And that card is Monastery Mentor. So Monastery Mentor is the exact same card except for white. And in addition to that, Monastery Mentor isn't a legend, and that card is restricted in Vintage. You are only allowed to play one, which for Vintage standards is essentially a ban list, right?
Right.
So this card, anytime you cast a non-creature spell, so already Geralf is better, because Geralf, if you notice, is just any spell after the first.
Okay.
And in addition to that, this one creates 1/1 monks. Now, yes, they have prowess, but prowess is only temporary. It won't last that turn. You don't really build a wide board that's also tall that builds an army. Instead, you just build a bunch of 1/1s that you then have to go off again on a later turn.
Okay.
It itself has prowess, so it itself is a threat, but that's less important in a format like cEDH, and because it doesn't have haste, you're not going to swing with it the turn you play it.
Okay.
So those are all kind of the main differences, whereas with Geralf, here are the big upsides. A, it's legendary, so now you get to put in the command zone. B, it's in a much, much stronger color identity, right? Blue is just, let's face it, the best color identity. There's debate about whether or not it's the best color identity for a mono-color deck, right? Some might say
conversation, but yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Red. Yeah, sure, yeah.
Black or red.
But we could all at least agree that blue itself is busted. So, in addition to that, and here's the big thing, the tokens themselves are 2/2s that grow, and the way they grow is in a kind of incestuous way, where if you have multiple copies of this same effect, or if you can double trigger this same effect, that's when things really get out of hand. So now you can imagine if we start having clone effects or roaming throne or things like that, things get wild.
Understood. That makes a lot of sense. So then what would you say this deck's archetype is then? Like, I'm seeing, like, after bringing up the Monastery Mentor, I'm definitely seeing the potential. Like, would you say this is maybe on the fast end of turbo? Are we mid-range, like a hybrid thing? Is it like Stax? Is it control? Like, what deck archetype would you put this under that best serves the best play style?
There's a bunch of people in the chat right now who have played against this deck, so maybe they can answer this question better than I can, because honestly, I've been at a loss to really come up with the real answer to this question. But what I will say is, yes, it's fast. Yes, it can go turbo, and it also has this very odd, what I would almost call a plan B, although ask half the people, and this deck is, Lisa, and I'll keep the Messiah from Dune. This deck can go like kind of mid-range beatdown, like Vetmir, if you've ever played against like a deck kind of like that, where it's like there's this kind of slow whirring engine that revs up, and then boom, you're just smashing face with 50 power or 100 power or whatever.
Right. 100%.
It just really flies under the radar in a kind of you almost have to keep asking this question when you're playing against this deck. Wait, are they on the turbo plan this game? Wait, are they on the go wide beatdown plan this game? Wait, are they on the hold a bunch of counter spells up, wait for the dust to clear, and then go to your turn and cast 2 or 3 spells into Mind's Desire and like combo off? So there's definitely a big part of this, which is I don't know what the game plan is, not because I'm ignorant to it, but because I don't know until my opening hand is revealed. So it's definitely fast. It's turbo aggro, kind of leaning into beatdown a little.
I definitely hear that. So it's like it's an adapt. Like I don't know who's ever seen Beyblade when they were kids. That was one of my favorite shows when I was a kid. And there would be the balance type. There'll be like the defense type, the attack type, but then like these cats start coming out with like adaptive and stuff like that, where like they can like click, then it turns whatever they want. And what I'm feeling from what you said is like it's adaptive, but more off like, give me a hand and I know what line best suits me. I may have to mulligan it depending on the pod, or depending on seat position, but most hands I can take a game plan towards success and lean on things like Brewer's Advantage, and even more the fact that my commander is not threat analysis like a Sisay or a Najila or a Blue Farm, where not everyone's initially poking at me. They're probably automatically thinking I'm mono blue control like every other people think ignorantly with the blue deck. But what really it is, I'm adaptive to whatever best serves me based off my hand, my seat position, and even more whatever I feel like is necessary for that pod. Did I receive that correctly?
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. I mean, probably the biggest takeaway from all of it is like what you just said at the end there. The seat position and pod is huge. I actually feel like this deck really thrives in a seat 3, seat 4 position, where other people start to show me what they're doing and what their plan is going to be for the game. And based off of that, then I can do my thing. Now, obviously, if I kept a more turbo hand and seat 1 or seat 2 drops, an early advantage engine, like a some sort of Mystic, whatever, then sure, it's less ideal there. But that's true of the majority of the format. So yeah, for me, it's definitely the ability to pivot, the ability to look at the table, look at the composition, look at the seat order, and say, no, I'm shipping this hand. And it mulligans pretty well. But what I find is I don't normally need to mulligan that much, other than the big reason, which is basically every deck I ever build. I don't play a lot of lands because
I noticed that, bro.
They don't win you the game. So
I noticed that, bro. You live on the edge. Like, he is on 24 lands, including MDFCs. Notably, they're all untapped. They're all the untapped MDFCs. But I noticed that, like, I mean, if all you need is lands, I guess, like, shit, mulligan for lands ain't a bad thing. You can play Mystic Study and Mystic Remora. And 2 things I want to touch on before we move forward. By the way, you have the best named deck I've ever seen on the planet. Dune Popcorn Bucket. If you don't get the inside joke, I'm not putting this on the screen, but just look up Dune Popcorn Bucket and all the SNL and people memes with that, and you'll get the joke. But by far, what was the inspiration for this name, please?
I mean, you want to ask that question? I mean, it's your choice. I mean, I'm not gonna.
Fuck you, bro. Let us rip it off, bro. What was the inspiration for this?
Here, listen, you're gonna love this because when you watch back the video, the first time you introduced this deck so far in the stream, you referred to it as Geralf the Fleshlight, which maybe was just an accident, you know, so no worries. But we've all been there, and you know, accidents happen, no worries. But that was the big inspiration, you know. The Dune popcorn bucket, it looks suspicious, is all I'll say, and that's really what makes me kind of laugh about it is so many people when they're referring to the deck, they're like, oh, you're on that Geralf, like the Fleshlight one. I'm like, it's Fleshwright, but yes, that's the deck I'm on.
I'm fucking weak.
Yo, and
Oh shit!
Yeah.
I didn't even notice it. Well, we gonna run with it at this point. But if y'all still at this point of the video, that's fucking hilarious. I didn't even notice that. But continue, bro.
Yeah. We have promise this wasn't planned. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm a goofball. I'm a memer at heart. I mean, anybody who plays locally with me knows that when we sit down at the table, there's a lot of table talk. You know, Roxy has this whole like no yap thing. Dude, yeah. If one day there was a more than just me playing this garbage meme deck and putting up results like I do, then that community of people would say extra yap. Because when you sit down and you're able to know what you're doing so intuitively and so well that you're able to then table talk super hard and get to lots of pocket eggs. Yeah, always got to bring a hard-boiled egg with you too to a tournament in your pocket and crack it, you know, right when someone puts something on the stack just to intimidate them. But yeah, I mean, if you get a lot of table talk and a lot of kind of talking people through different lines, especially if sometimes there's players at the table who don't know what someone else is on. Like, okay, to give some context here, where we play in Tucson, the shop we play at is called Top Deck Towers, and the players we play with are skilled. They've been playing Magic for a long time. They've been playing Commander for a long time, and they're putting up results. We've got Papa Squats, who's a buddy of ours named Nick. I'm not sure if you saw his recent result on Magda. He's an excellent Magda pilot. He's an excellent pilot in general, but he's an excellent Magda pilot. He took down Path to the Peak this was like a month and a half, 2 months ago. He took the whole thing down out of nowhere, crushed it, and he's one of those players that knows what he's doing. We also have our other buddy Shane, who was on Blue Farm back in Fishbowl 3 last year out in San Diego, and he got top 16. He actually took 9th place. And our other buddy Jeremy, who you know, who's always on Rionia, it's Faded MTG.
Oh, that's my guy. Yeah. No, that's my guy. Yeah. What's Faded? My guy. That's my guy right there, bro. Yeah. Yes, bro.
So this is my local scene. Like these people, and those are just a few of them. I mean, these people are really dominant on the decks that they play. They know what they're doing. They know how to take lines. And the thing is because they know their deck so well, they see me coming with this weird stuff and they're able to pivot and they're able to learn. So it's not like, this isn't Brewer's advantage. Like, I'm like, what does your deck do? Like, oh, I guess I'll just let you storm off. It's like, no. They know what they're doing. What I'm getting at though is the table talk's so huge because
we're losing you just for a little bit. Hold on, we just lost you for just a second.
Some of these lines.
We lost you just for a second, Holden. Could you let us know one more time? You said it wasn't the Brewers' advantage. Talk to us.
Yeah, I'm saying it's not just like the. You still got me here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, it's not just like the Brewers' advantage of, you know, like, oh, I have no idea what your deck does and I'm gonna let you storm off and win. You know, it's more of this kind of thing where they know how to play through this stuff, but the table talk can be so powerful with a deck like this because it's not clear which way you're going to win with. So it's not very obvious based on, like, you don't show on board like, oh yeah, I'm gonna untap and win. It's like, no, sometimes I'm gonna untap, make, you know, another 20 power zombies and pass and hold up a bunch of interaction. So, you know, it's you kind of have to talk through other people at the table and be like, oh, you know, just so you know, this Magda player currently has 4 treasures. When they get the 5th, now they have an opportunity, and by then it might be too late, or whatever. Or just so you know, this player here has all these advantage engines. They've drawn all these cards. Like, we really need to be careful that if we fight on this stack right now, you know, that it's going to then king make the next player, or, you know, things like that. So we just have a strong community who really knows what they're doing. And so because of that, we're really at least in my opinion, I'm really in a very kind of blessed sort of position to play against good players who then prep me to really work on my own brewing and my own deck. And I can't just bring some garbage and throw it against the wall and see what happens. You know, I got to actually have a good brew.
Right.
So that's huge about the way our local scene goes.
No, 100%. No, I definitely love hearing that, because that was one of the questions I had. Like, a lot of times when these newer decks come out, especially, it's not even like this. People have been trying to work on this for years now, and we finally got the cards. Now, this is literally a brand new card that came out within the last few months. And the fact that you're able to have these performances, if you all are interested, like, you could check out his primer, list off some of his achievements from the first outing for the deck was 2-0-1, first local monthly, got top 4, took second place at a locals cEDH weekly, and also he got the top 4 back in June 2nd at and split the prize 3 ways after forcing somewhat of a stalemate on board with 2 copies of Kenan's Coma and a copy of Tim Mithrasiel's Consecrated Sphinx. Devil Sphinx is dumb. It is. Well, I'm really glad to hear it's not a Brewers Advantage thing, but it's actually a skill thing. And so I do want to talk a bit about your tournament experiences with this deck. But before we do that, I just wanted to ask quickly, like, you've kind of answered it already, but what play style gets you towards a win? Is that purely pod dependent, or are you mostly thinking proactively, reactively, oppressively, like oppressive, or what play style really gets you the wins that you seem to be getting in these tournaments?
I would say I would answer it the inverse, which is the thing that makes it the hardest for me to win. The thing that makes it hands down the hardest for me to win, outside of the obvious, like, all 3 of my opponents have the world's most broken start and they all go turn 1 Ristic or whatever. Outside of that, the hardest way for me to really win is if there is a super hard Stax deck, or specifically a commander Stax based piece early. So like a Drannith Magistrate early, and the hand that I kept didn't have one of my 5 pieces of removal that I play in the deck. And I'm doing this purposefully. This isn't like some huge hole in my game plan that I never thought about and now I'm screwed. It's like, no, I'm doing this intentionally. And the company that I work for, we've got this kind of this motto where they say let fires burn. And what it means is, like, some fires are just more important than others. You put the ones that are really important out, and the smaller ones you let burn. This is kind of one of those small fires, which is like, yeah, sometimes you're going to go up against that random person who goes turn 1 Drannith, or going to go against that deck that's like a really hard Stax deck. But frankly, I don't know what sort of games you've been playing lately, but for us, we are in mid-range hell. Yes. These Stax decks just don't really exist as much. There's a reason that you're not really seeing a lot of Drannith in the meta. There's a reason why you're not really seeing a lot of these hard Stax early pieces. It's because it shuts off so many of the powerful, mid-range strategies that are happening right now. You're not seeing a lot of Curse Totem and Grafdigger's Cage and Torpor Orb and all that stuff. And, as an aside, none of those cards shut my deck off. And in fact, they're all in my sideboard, and I put them in and out of the list depending on the week. But the big one that does shut it off is a Drannith-esque effect, specifically just stopping me from playing the early commander. Right. I have ways to then remove it, but that's, kind of I would say, so to answer your question, it's like, what do I want to see? I want to see Italian. I want to see a blue farm. I want to see, I guess the super turbo decks are a little scary for me. So like the Cricks, and then even depending on the list, the Magdas, like those kinds of things, that can be a little scary just because people see me on mono blue and they're like, oh, he got free interaction. And if I didn't, we lose. It's turn 1, we lose. And that's gonna happen. That's part of the coin flip, right?
And that's just part of the game. I feel like I like the way Nomura Cards on his podcast says it's like right now. I think it's his co-host that actually says it's like right now the term turbo is so loose because I feel like every cEDH deck, because we're led in a combo format, has a nuts hand that you can win on turn 1 or turn 2. Every deck has that. What happens is there's some 100%. Decks that may lean more on consistently doing that, while some decks lean more on being able to do like their normal game plan, whether it be Stax, whether it be mid-range, just pure mid-range, where they're trying to win turn 3 to 4 to like 3 to 5 or so. And like some decks are trying to, like, they'll, depending on what type of mid-range they are, depending on where we're sitting in that mid-range tail, they may be more Staxy like a Marnius, or they may be more turbo like a Satya or a Najila, or they may be like more just right there smack in the middle, where it's just like TNK Blue Farm, trying to win turn 3 to 5. If I get there on turn 3, cool. If I get there on turn 5, it really doesn't matter unless I get there. So I definitely hear you there. And like with that said, we got Fried Crisp Crip Ray 93 saying that he plays against you. He says this is more of a control turbo hybrid, strives in the mid-range hell, like you said, because like he said, it leads to players into a false sense of security that when they realize he's probably gonna win, it's probably too late. And I definitely hear you there. So yeah. But I'm glad
big shout out to Ray. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, for sure. It's true. The big thing, like I said, it's like you don't always know though that I am gonna win. Like sometimes it's like, oh, he's going off, and then he's done going off, and now he just has some mana and some counter spells in hand and 40 powers of zombies on board past the turn. It's like that doesn't win the game,
Right.
But it sure does make it hard for the player that's trying to do ad nauseam necro things to feel comfortable, going deep when they're getting smacked in the face with zombies or whatever else, But
Right.
But yeah, the false sense of security, that's a good way to put it. I like that.
100%. No, yeah, like you touched on that as well. But man, we talking about play styles and all these other things, but I want to hear some tournament experiences. Like if you could just touch on maybe your best performing tournament, or just what is the most best showcase you've had with this deck, and tell us about that experience, bro.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess, you kind of went over it in the primer. What I'll say is that, it's not like we're not out here playing 100-person tournaments and I have these amazing results, and all this stuff. And really the true test is about to come, because I'm almost 100% that this is the deck I'm going to be on for Fishbowl 4 that's coming up in the end of July.
Okay.
Me and essentially the entire crew from our store of locals, we are all headed out to Fishbowl, and we are all bringing the fucking heat, baby. So they better be ready. I'm just saying that, someone from Arizona is going to be in that top 4, top 8, and we're all going to be, what would be golden is if we can meet each other in the finals, and do a little bit of friendly fire there. But, as far as real recent results, we have weeklies, but they're weeklies with these people who are great players, and I put in some good numbers there. But this most recent tournament on the 2nd, what I found to be so interesting about it was, I'm sitting down in pods with players who, like we have people who are going like turn 1 smothering type. Like, dude, how do you come back from that? Like, that's just so much advantage in a Kenrith deck or in a blue farm deck or something like that. It's like you're losing that game, right?
Yes.
And yet here we are, and slowly 1 turn, 2 turns go by, they get some mana advantage, they try a couple shenanigans, we shut them down with all the free interaction, and I'm just playing the slow and steady game, and then slam a steel enchantment. That's my smothering type. You know what's really good at a mono blue deck? Infinite treasures. And so there's kind of been these moments where it's like I'm just really, really trying to be as careful as I can about finding the window, and I'm trying really, really hard not to underestimate my opponents, because that's something, frankly, I could do in eternal formats. You could sit down to a big event and know that you're gonna crush through scrubs for the first couple rounds until you get into some real competition, and that's not the case here. We're playing against good players with tight plays who know what they're doing. Sure, they punt every once in a while, but I do too. We're all human.
Yeah, bro.
And so I have to really, really not underestimate these players. And so one of the big kind of outstanding performances that has been kind of just mind-blowing to me is I'm pretty sure I'm on 12 clone effects, 12 or 11. Let me look. Yeah, I'm on 10 right now. So I'm on 10 clone effects. So if you can imagine this, what this looks like is your good cards that you're playing and all your good stuff decks, those are my cards, okay? And then also, my broken Geralf gets much more broken when I've got 2 of them, or I've got a roaming throne, or I've got a Takashima that I then also have a spark double that I then also go into a metamorph and land a displacer kitten and start flipping the metamorph up and down in the air, and just every spell I cast makes another 5 to 10 zombies. And it just, you get into this point where, what do you counter? It doesn't matter what you counter.
It doesn't.
Because the spells don't matter, right? That's why I'm playing Cantrip. That's why I'm on Consider, Infuriate, Ponder, Brainstorm,
Yes. No, if I can just 2 things I want to throw out real quick. I love that level of inevitability and how you're leveraging these clone effects to just make your commander go from busted to even more busted. But side note, War of the Spark was one of my favorite sets, and that's when Spark Double came out. I had no idea that they had this art come through. This is such a sexy Spark Double art This is like, if you all are not familiar, it lets you enters as a copy of a creature or a planeswalker. This is such a sexy art. So I have to give you your flowers for that. I did not know this came out. This is beautiful. The second thing I definitely
thanks. Yeah, and
go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say thanks. Yeah, and also I think you might, if you refresh your browser, I updated the tags like right before we started, so there should be 10 clones, not 9.
Okay, let's do that.
I just didn't tag Nanogene Conversion appropriately. So that's another card where it's like, here, I spend my life on Scryfall, dude. Like I'm out there in the trenches of putting in work and Scryfall.
Hell yeah!
Randomly, this card popped out of nowhere. I was like, how is this a Magic card? Nanogene Conversion? What is this card, dude? Who thought this was okay? Who at Wizards said that we're allowed to do this? Like, this is bonkers.
I'm looking at it right now. It's a 3 in the blue source that says choose target creature you control. Each other creature becomes a copy of that creature until the end of turn, except it isn't legendary, which is actually that has to be a combo piece in your deck at that point, bro. Like we're like,
oh, it's if you have one more spell after this, it's almost hard to not win the game.
God
Essentially, imagine
damn.
this, okay? You have a Geralf in play, and let's say the first turn you played it, you cantrip once or twice. So you had like 2 other zombies. So you have Geralf, you have a 2/2 zombie, and then you have the additional zombie you made for that turn, which comes into play with a +1/+1 counter.
Yes.
So you have Geralf, a 2/2, and a 3/3.
Okay.
You then go to the turn where you untap with Nanogene Conversion, and you say, especially, this is the best part, especially if your opponents have important and powerful creatures in play. They now all read, if you target your Geralf, all of their creatures are now Geralf. And you know what's bad about Geralf? Is trying to do fucking anything on someone else's turn, because it does nothing. So now they all have a bunch of vanilla, non-legendary 2/3 Dune popcorn buckets sitting on their board. That's all their creatures. Every single, all their Nezahals, their consecrated sphinxes, their whatever,
Wow.
their Kinnons, all that stuff is now a 2/3 vanilla popcorn bucket. And I now have a popcorn bucket, I have a popcorn bucket, and I have a popcorn bucket. And you know what you got to do with 3 popcorn buckets on your turn? You get to go the fuck off. So now every spell you cast makes 3 zombies. The first one enters, right, as a 2/2. The second one enters as a 2/2 that saw the first one, right? And now all 3 Geralfs trigger separately, giving it 3 +1/+1 counters. Then the third one enters, sees the first 2, they all trigger separately, giving it 6 +1/+1 counters. So you just put 2 + 5 is 7, + 6 and 2 is 8 is 15. So you just put 15 power on board from one spell, any spell. It could be a Mox Opal, it doesn't matter. There's a reason I'm on Subtlety. You wanna know why? Because that card is free. You get to cast it for free. You have all these free spells, and as you continue to combo, you know what's really good with a bunch of massive zombies? Altered Dementia and all the other altars. We'll get into the combo pieces and stuff, but these clone effects are busted in this deck. And their fail case, and this is why I'm playing them, because I got to remember, I'm not always going to have the ability to combo and pop the fuck off, right? In Magical Christmas Land, doesn't always exist.
Exactly.
Their fail case is I get to copy your shit, your good shit, right? Some of them you can only copy your own creatures, like for example Spark Double, but I try to have kind of a varied suite of clones. And I'm trying to use those as my own advantage engines in mid-range hell.
Right. Yeah, I'll get to. I know I have some questions I want to ask about the clone package. We'll get to that in a second. I really want to jump into win cons, but I want to ask if you had any other notable tournament experiences or any other things you just want to touch on, because I'm ready to dive into how we winning, because you kind of getting me excited, bro. So anything else on the tournament?
You know what? Yeah, it's funny you should say this, okay? I got a little bone to pick, all right? And there's one person out there in this world who's going to hear this, and I just got to tell them that this is the most lucky thing that I've ever seen happen in the history of all of Magic the Gathering, okay? So the 2 month ago tournament, the one that I top board that we lost on turn 2, okay, I just have to tell you this play that happened solely so that I can get it off my chest and it etched into the history and the annals of time, okay? They went turn 1, land, pass. Everyone else passes around. They were at the second seed. The first player, who's Tim Necrom, who's an amazing player, by the way. He's a local guy named Zach, who's really fantastic, knows what he's doing, has a bunch of reps on the deck, has a bunch of wins with the deck. He goes, turn 2, land, I don't even know, it was like Dark Ritual or Cabal Ritual or something. He rituals up, and then he just goes Adnaz. So he just smashes an Adnaz, turn 2, naked, hoping for the best. All right? You know what? No one else had interaction. So do you know what the turn 2 player did? They said, I'll tap this land and cast Demonic Consultation. And so we're all just like, all right, he's gonna Demonic Consultation for some, I don't know, like Force of Will or whatever, some sort of interaction. Great, yeah, go for it. He names Force of Will. You know what we do? We flip the whole deck all the way down to the third to last card is Force of Will. 2 cards left in library, Force of Will. His hand, he had a blue card, he pitches it, he counters it. Awesome. Each step of this interaction along the way, every time the Adnaz player has been asking, hey, do you guys just want to split? Do you want to split? Like, we could just draw. Like, we don't have to worry about what's going to happen because the day was getting late, whatever. He looks at the table and says, quote, fuck it, we ball. He passes to his turn. No, this has really happened, and anyone in the chat can vouch for this. He passes to his turn, and you know what we all assumed? We all just assumed, oh, he must have a Thassa's Oracle in hand, because we never saw it exiled. So we think he's just going to vanilla hard cast a Thassa's Oracle, right? He 2 cards in the library, passes to his turn. He goes, he flips the top card off the library. It's the Thassa's Oracle. He didn't know for sure it was coming. He was coin flipped into getting it, and prior to that, casting the Demonic Consultation, if you don't know you have a Thoracle in hand, how would you know? Like, how would you know?
I was just thinking, maybe did he mulligan it to the bottom? Because it's turn 2. Like, maybe he. What was his mulligan?
I think he had 7 or 6. He had 7 or 6.
Fuck! There was no way he knew what the bottom 3 cards are.
No, he didn't. And we shuffled his deck. He cracked a fetch. It's not like it was, cheating. Plus, I know he doesn't cheat. So
that's a play. That people do that. Like they'll intentionally throw it to the bottom, consultation on the end step before their turn, then play the Thassa's if they know it. But fuck.
Yeah, not just fuck, but fuck it, we ball.
Okay.
So big shout out there. That's not a moment for me, but somebody had to have that moment relived into YouTube forever. So,
dude,
that one's just unreal. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I would say, I guess, for my own personal enjoyment for tournament moments, it was pretty sweet this last tournament on the second to get into the top 4 and see Kinnan popping off and see, I think it was the other person on TNK, Timna Thrasios. And to just have a Consecrated Sphinx on board, to have a Coma on board, all these huge advantage pieces, and to be able to go, sure, I'm going to copy your Coma. Cool. And I'm going to copy the copy of Coma. Then I'm going to copy the Consecrated Sphinx. Then I'm going to put a spell in the stack. And we're going to draw our entire decks together, comrade. We just drew our whole decks and then passed around the table and eventually got to the point where it was such a sticky stalemate that there's a world where if we try to go off, we're not 100% sure what's going to happen, but we're going to cast so many spells and it's going to get kind of mucked up. It'll kind of feel like a coin flip. Yeah. So we decided to split 3 ways because we had already taken out one of the other players. Yeah. And that's fine. I'm happy to split 3 ways with the homies who are really, really good players and get some cool prizes for it. So
100%. And bro, both those experiences are like first of all with the turn 2 Thassa's win with not knowing. I'm not gonna lie. Once you get the top 4, it's like, yeah, I can split this. But I'm like, you know what? It's been a long day. Fuck it, we ball. Like literally, I can understand. Like it's been a long day. I'm with the homies. Like fuck it. Like I can sit here and be like, oh, let's just split. But let's just see what the fuck happens. If you get the Adnaz on turn 2, this is like you're gonna win the next 10 minutes either way. So if I end up exiling my entire library, fuck it, we ball because I was gonna lose either way to your turn 2 Adnaz either way. So it didn't matter. It didn't really matter whether I did it or not. So to be able to get the win, flowers to him wherever you are in the ethos. I'm really proud of you. I'm really happy you had that moment, and we get to share that on YouTube and to also Twitch. And then to your moment with the clone effects, I love that you're being able to leverage such powerful cards because that is a thing. It's funny, like we aren't seeing as much of cards like Gilded Drake and other things along that because of clones, but also because of clones, we get to see the flip side of things. All right, we may not see as much Gilded Drake, but we are being able to see decks that usually don't have access or may not run these very powerful big drops that Kinnan and other big mana decks may run, but you play it, so I play it. You know what I'm saying? So unless you have the counter spell to remove mine, I'm getting the Consecrated Sphinx too. I'm getting the Coma Cosmo Serpent too. I'm getting the Crom too. I'm getting the a tip too. You know what I'm saying? And you can say that your deck is better than mine, but if we both, what is the incredible saying? Everybody's super, Nobody.
Yeah.
So
100%. Nobody is.
I absolutely love that you're leveraging the strength in your color, which is the mono blue, not just for counter spells, but also the popularity of clones and just really knowing how to choose your best clone, whether it be your own commander or your opponent's creature. So that's just really dope. And so before we get into win cons, I have to quickly ask, just because I don't want to forget, I'm seeing Flesh Duplicate and all these amazing clones. I'm not seeing a Phantasmal image. Is that because of the targeting, or what's the thought process between no Phantasmal?
Phantasmal is just the worst of them. Yeah. And one of the things that I've noticed a lot of times is that because of the style of deck that I'm playing, it's not like Kenny, where I want to clone my own, or maybe not Kenneth. I don't know. I don't play 5-color bad deck, but maybe you're trying to clone your own dockside, and that's your whole game plan.
Yeah.
And that's not my game plan. So
gotcha.
Because of that, what I'm actually trying to do is like clone advantage pieces and things like that. And I have so many other cards in my own deck that bounce my own cards. Like I'm playing, the ugliest Magic card in the history of time. Dreamstalker is the art for the deck. It's essentially its own little sandworm with teeth, but that card bounces permanents, right? CDC's Faithful bounces creatures. Shrieking Drake bounces creatures. Sure, they combo with themselves, but they also bounce my own stuff. They're I'm also on Displacer Kitten, which bounces creatures. I have a bunch of bounce spells. I've never one time in the history of life cast a Chain of Vapor on somebody else's thing. I only cast it on my own stuff to go up mana and to bounce all my things and replay all my things. I'm on the new Sink into Stupor. I'm on all these bounce effects. And so because of that, I can't bounce my own Image. It dies. So
got you.
Yeah, that's the main reason.
Understood. Yeah, it's funny you said it was the worst one, but I'm like, dang, I've heard other people say it's the best one in a way because it doesn't require the double pips or the amount of mana. But I definitely hear for your specific deck, not being able to bounce your own thing to continue to chain off your combo can hurt exponentially. Where it's like, okay, I've had enough of this Consecrated Sphinx. I need 2 of my Geralfs because I have a Spark Double on board that is a non-legendary copy, and I need a 3rd copy to have the Xaxes to then go extra turn to win the game. But I need this Flesh Duplicate to go back to my hand, or I need the Spark Double to come back to my hand, or whatever, the Sakashi Imposter, whatever it may be. So I definitely hear you there for this brew that serves it.
If there's currently 2 clones that are like the closest to making the list right now that are like not on the list, it's the other Sakashima, the cereal box one, the one that pops off of Kark, the partner one.
Yes.
And the Image. Those are the 2 clones that are like, I'm always kind of mulling around in the back of my mind, like, oh, based off of these changes, should I put those cards back in? Like, should I put that Sakashima back in of 1,000 Faces or whatever? Like, so, it's hard. It's hard to know the exact thing. And what's even harder is it's not like I have a huge Discord community of people that I could be chopping this up with. What's awesome, I will say, is that I chop it up with in your Discord, and those people are great, and we get to bounce ideas off each other. Shout out to the TCC Discord. Please join. Everything's amazing there. You'll make it to the promised land if you join the Discord. But outside of that, it's like, it's not like I'm in some group. Yeah, it's not like I'm in some group of people who are also on this deck that it can be like, oh, I played 30 games with Image, and Image was actually great. It's like, well, I played in a local tournament and tried to bounce it myself, and it died, so I'm off it.
Yeah.
I definitely. It's kind of hard to get as many reps when you're only the person playing it. So.
No, I definitely hear you. One other question for you may be already running this. There's a clone effect that's on the MDFC, but it's a tap land, and I bring this up because it seems like
Glasspool Mimic.
Thank you. It seems like we own that 24 land count. For me, whatever I've been finding in my recent decks in these mid-range hells where I'm not trying to just upchuck my hand on turn 2 or 3 and win the game, I'm usually sitting between that 27, 28 lands. Like, is that one that may be worth the inclusion, or is it just the fact that it only touches your lands and it's a tap land where it's just like, no, fuck that shit. I'm not touching on that at all. Is that not even like a thing?
It's tough. I mean, I did think about it. I think it's in the considering. But yeah, it's tough. It's a tap land for sure, which is pretty rough in a deck like this. But more than anything, it costs 3 mana, and it doesn't have any of the kind of what I would consider like the big 2 to 3 requirements that we're looking for, right? So one of the requirements is to be able to clone other people's stuff. This one can only clone your own creature.
Right.
So it doesn't do that, right? It doesn't also have the upside of being able to clone an artifact or a creature the way that maybe like Phyrexian Metamorph can. It also doesn't have the upside of being able to be one of the cheap ones like Fimage or Flex Duplicant. Like it's not just 2 mana, right? And then the last really big one is, which to me in this deck is extremely important, is it's not one of the ones that circumvents the legendary rule, like the Stock-Schemas and the Spark Doubles and stuff. So yeah, those are the main reasons.
No, I definitely hear you there.
I've given it a lot of thought. Don't get me wrong.
No. It came to my mind. I was kind of confident that he probably already thought about this. For me, I'm not a huge fan of tap lands. In my monocolor decks, I nail out 1 to 2 if they really do what I'm trying to do. You brought up one of my homies, Faded, and that's the homie when it comes to Reunion. I play Reunion too, and I play notably 3 tap lands: the Devotion counter one, the Valakut Awakening because it's card drawing mono red and we need that, and last one, the Dwarven one, which comes in tap. You can tap for a red, or you can sack and tap it for 2 red, and in such an explosive color, it's great. And so playing a tap land turn 1 is such a common thing for Reunion. It's not a big deal because we can still push our commander out on turn 2. And so I don't know if that's strong enough, or I don't know if the hindrance of it being a tap land would hold the deck back. But when we talk about clones and you having other non-legendary things, just like, I mean, if you ever find that you just like, hey, it's just a free landslide, fuck it, like in the Wars universe, I'm playing it turn 1, maybe, but at the same time, if the deck is performing, fuck it, fuck it, we ball. Do we really need that additional landslide? And if it wasn't untapped land, like if they made a new MDFC that was untapped, I would have to say, bro, what the fuck are you thinking? You just run this land. But because it comes in tapped, I definitely can see where, and it doesn't even have, it is one of the more tunnel vision version of the clone effects. I can definitely see where it's like, it's so close, but it's not an untapped land, and it's also not giving me, I have to have another card out to make it be busted. So at this point, it's better maybe to put a rock or some other thing that helps the game plan than trying to force another clone in that's not doing everything we need it to do. So I can definitely understand that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, all the points you brought up are actually really, really great points, and it's the thing that keeps me thinking about it. I think if I was going to play any tap land in the deck, full stop, the only tap land I would play would be Spraz and Scary, which is the blue version of that double. It's the double blue one. You tap it and remove a counter and add double blue for the exact reason you're talking about. It gives it an explosive start. It's like Sapper's A. Yeah. So that's one thing to think about for sure, because I really do want those explosive mana turns. But yeah, if it was the next one, if I could go even one deeper, then it would be that clone. It would be the Galactus for sure.
100%. And I think this one's worth it, like, to have it as considering board if you don't already have it as well. Like, I run this one in my Mono Blue Teferi list, but granted, that's a 6 mana commander. You're a 3 mana commander. It's kind of like, I'm already doing my thing. Like, I'll play test it, but I don't know how much big mana you need. But shit, maybe I may end up seeing that. Let's talk win cons. Like, talk to me, like, how is this deck winning? And we can talk about that, and maybe we'll find out we need a Spraz and Scary, but talk to me, like, how is this deck doing what it does? And just go ahead, talk to me.
So no problem. If you go to the tags and turn them on, at the very top there will be this section that just says actual win cons.
Got you.
So that to me is kind of, I've tried to break this down to make it a little bit more straightforward. So we have a few different win cons, and just to be super clear, when I call something a win con, it might be different than the way some other people refer to stuff. So other people might say, oh, this builds overwhelming advantage and then I win.
Okay.
But for me, my question is always, cool, show me exactly how. Like, when a cannon just pops off with infinite mana and assault, and then they go, do you guys scoop? You're like, no. Like, do you play Dracios? Or do you? And you know why I asked this question? It's because I'm old enough to remember when LSV played in that stupid fucking tournament without an actual win con in his deck. So he would storm off, not have a win con, present it to his opponent, and they would concede. He won the tournament that way. Wow. And I have so much PTSD in my mind about possibly getting got by somebody that way that, to me, I'm not scooping. I mean, I'll scoop if it's obvious and we're done. I don't want to waste people's time.
Right.
But you need to show me the win con. Show me the money. So for me, the money, when it
If I could just add on, not to mention, it's just I don't even want to call it common courtesy, but it's just common just as, all right, we're fine to admit we don't have anything to stop what you're doing. Can you just you mill yourself out? Show me the Thassa's in your deck. That's all I want to see. I'm sure you run it, but just show me the Thassa's Oracle in your deck, or just some other bullshit, or a finale. Show me the finale you're gonna cast, and then we're good. We don't have to sit here and make you turn sideways. Just we get it. So I definitely hear it. That's actually. Yeah. I never heard about that experience, but that's also a thing to be wary and conscious about. Like, oh, do they actually have a way to finish? Because I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. We've all had a game where the person's like, do y'all concede? I'm like, I'm gonna let you play it out. Like, I don't have anything, but just play it out. It's not a big deal. And they keep going and realize, oh, I don't have this card in my deck anymore. Or, oh, it doesn't work like I think, or oh, I'm already past combat, so I can't finale y'all, and I don't run any extra turn effects, so I have to pass turn and go around. And usually they usually have the game already locked because they'll have their whole deck in their hand or something like that. But maybe it's that kind of fringe situation where just like, yeah, you probably should have won, but you fucked up. So I did.
Yeah. And this becomes even more prevalent in tournaments, right? In tournament situations when time is a real factor. I mean, you don't want to be a scumbag and angle shoot people, but it's also a tournament where real money's on the line.
Exactly.
And so what happens when someone is about to go to time and they're trying to rush you through to, do you just concede? Do you just concede? It's like, well, no, sorry, you're on Tivit. You got to take infinite turns, and I'm not going to just concede. Start taking your turns, buddy.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's just one example. And people might look at that different ways. Some people might not agree with that. And that's totally fine. Like, I'm not saying I'm 100% right on that. I'm just saying, like, those are those sorts of examples where, you got to be kind of careful. And also another really big one is, you know what people forget all the time? The card that they exiled to their Gemstone Caverns, or the card that they exiled to their Force of Will on turn 1, And I'm sorry you exiled your finale to your Gemstone or whatever. Hopefully Kinnan players aren't doing that. But those are examples of what we see. Oh, we're going to lose the game unless I force this. Okay, I'm going to force it. And the only blue card in my hand happens to be Thrasios, which is my only outlet for all this infinite mana.
Right.
Okay, well, I don't want to lose, so I'm going to do it. And then a few turns later, it's time to go off, and you have your Basalt and whatever. And I keep using Kinnan just because it's like a more known thing and people understand kind of the lines there or whatever. But these are things I think about. So anyways, back to actual win cons.
If I can add just one more thing onto that, I agree with that. That I'm this. I've been brewing Satya for a while now, and I've been completely just on the line about whether to take Thassa's Oracle out or in. Like, some people say it's a dead card in the Satya list. I actually use it as a card diver. It lets me look 8 cards deep if I already have the commander on board. But at the same time, I want to put Goblin Engineer back in as a tutor for LED or for Brass Tunnel Grinder, a card that I'm playtesting as well. But it's kind of like this thing where I'm just sitting there. I'm like, you know what? I can win without Thassa's. However, it is the easiest way to just get there and just get the job done of just saying, all right, I have infinite treasures. Here's Professional Facebreaker, exile my library, Thassa's Oracle, and it's clean. And granted, the One Ring is seeing a slight decline in usage. It's still prevalent enough in this mid-range hell where being able to win through the One Ring, it's still a thing you need to be able to do. Because it's just a thing. And if you can't win at instant speed, what you gonna do, big dog? You know what I'm saying? And of course, like, I run Angel's Grace in the list where I can go, all right, I'm an Angel's Grace, continue to draw everybody else till you dead. So that's a way. But then my thought goes to, well, what if Angel's Grace is not available to me? What if I pitch it to my Chrome Mox, or I pitch it to a Gemstone Caverns, and now I lose the entire tournament because I don't have at least 2 different ways to win through that One Ring, and now we're sitting there. It's a really hard decision to make, but it's one that we all have to think about when we're brewing our decks. So I just want to throw that in there as well.
For sure.
Because you bring up a very good point, brother.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, and everything you just described is the reason why I love cEDH, and not just cEDH, but Magic in general when it comes to brewing, is because you have to think of the outs. You have to think of those fringe situations. You have to really ask yourself, is this worth the risk? Like, am I willing to make my deck a little bit better, a little bit faster, a little bit leaner, and know that there is going to be that off chance that I'm not going to see the Angel's Grace, and because of that, I'm not going to be able to draw the table out, and so I lose to the One Ring player that just coincidentally happened to cast a One Ring, And to me, that's good. It's good to be aware of those things, but sometimes, not always, but sometimes cEDH tuners of decks, or even maybe brewers of decks, can get a little too caught up on that. So my personal philosophy, and this is just mine, my personal philosophy is, make sure you have one way to win that can get around protection from everything.
Yep.
So in this list, essentially there's two ways, kind of, but the main one is very mastermind, drawing the table out.
Yep.
And the other way to wins, or the other ways to win, should just be good, efficient, and synergistic. It shouldn't be like the only reason I'm playing this card is because it wins me the game,
right?
And only in the situation when I've already done A plus B for X number of times for Z number of minutes. You know, it's like, okay, I've done this whole formula, and now I need this one card, and that one card just instantly wins me the game.
Right.
Thousand Oracle is a different situation, right? Because Thousand Oracle is just one slot in your deck, easy to find for a lot of lists, and goes the fuck off with two cards that are very, very easy to cast, in addition to all of these other fringe situations like brain freezing yourself out and blah, 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 all these other ways to do it, right? And all these great decks. So we know it's good. What I found, and it's very interesting you raised this, is that I cut Thoracle from this list. So I am not on a way to Thoracle. And if anybody who knows me knows, I love mono blue Thoracle decks. There is nothing spicier than playing. I have a reality chip list that I put a bunch of time and effort into. I mean, the primer is like chef's kiss. Like, I went deep on it. I made like AI generated images of like merfolk and cyber, microchips having little creature babies or whatever. Like, I really like put some time in that primer. What I found over time, though, is that the deck was a little too linear. But one of the cool things I was doing there is Thought Lash combo. And I took down a legacy local tournament playing mono blue Thought Lash. I know how to play mono blue Thought Lash. Thought Lash is a busted magic card. It's the best card on the reserve list. Don't ask me how I could back that up with data, because I can't. And it's just a 4-mana enchantment that lets you exile as many cards on the top of your library to prevent damage, and it has cumulative upkeep, where if you can't pay it by exiling cards, you have to exile your whole deck. So it's just another way to tainted pact yourself, kind of. And this is all in mono blue. There's also a secondary way to do this with a card called Paradigm Shift. Obviously, you could do this with like the Leveler, but that's a garbage card. Paradigm Shift is, 1 and a blue, and it just says exile your library and then shuffle your graveyard into your library. So if you have no graveyard, when you cast Paradigm Shift, it's spelled like paradigm. It's like Paradigm. If you cast it with nothing in your graveyard, it will just instantly nuke it'll just instantly nuke your library, and then you can Thoracle again. So these are things I was doing in Legacy. I was playing 4 Paradigm Shift, 4 Thought Lash, 4 Thassa's Oracle, a bunch of counter spells, a bunch of fast mana like Ancient Tombs and things like that, Chrome Mox, Lotus Petal, whatever. And then I was just looking at the field of who I was going to play up against, and I was like, all right, well, I know I got to beat these combo decks this way, I know I got to do this, and I just played a very controlling turbo list. And I was doing that in the reality chip. What I found here, though, is that basically there's a different soul or structure to this deck I would have to totally pivot into if I wanted to be doing real self-mill graveyard-based shenanigans. Right. And that's a technical term. And graveyard-based shenanigans are where when you mill yourself, you want to mill yourself. It's good for you, right? And I'm just not... I just found from a bunch of playtesting that when I went that way with the deck, the deck was being stretched in too many directions, and it was not really what the deck wanted to do, if that makes sense. I know that sounds a little kind of woo-woo, like, oh, the deck doesn't want to do anything, right? Like, you built it, you know what you want.
No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
with opening hands.
Yeah. It's sometimes,
and when you get that feeling where you're just like, oh, I want to go this way, I want to go that way, or
it's like
it wants to bring me this way. It's
exactly.
Like, well, then I'm going to listen to it,
I think that's something a lot of brewers, like, especially at the most competitive levels, realize, especially for cEDH, is like, if I want to do the fun thing, I might as well play casual. But if I'm playing cEDH, sometimes I have to make those hard cuts for what is best for the deck to make the commander work, or to make whatever strategy I want to make work. Maybe if I wanted to do a certain strategy, I have to realize I need to play a different commander to make that strategy work. Or if I want to make this commander work, I have to let the certain cards go. Like, for example, how you said, it just didn't feel like it wanted to play Thought Lash. It felt like it wanted to do something different. So it puts you in that situation. I'm like, yeah, the thing is, like, it's not a completely worthless deck, but I have to go a completely different direction from where I want. And that's where you have to come to that decision. Like, do I want to keep brewing this deck, or do I want to detached from what I want in order to make the deck be the greatness that it is. You know what I'm saying? Which is a reality chip deck that's doing X, Y, Z, A, B, C. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Reality chip wants to do it, right? Reality chip is whatever that card is in the command zone, future sight. It's future sight in the command zone. It's busted, right? And you get to just like storm the hell off. And I put up good results. I mean, I did well locally, but what I kept finding is it was too linear, it was too turbo, and it folded to Collector Oof, which this current deck that I'm on doesn't. So that's awesome. Like, you don't give a shit about Null Rod and Collector Oof. I'm not going to play those cards because I want fast mana. I'm in blue, so I'm limited. You know, I can't play Dorks and stuff, right? I mean, I can, but they're garbage. I can't play like Llanowar Elves and that kind of stuff, right? So instead, I got to play, you know, actual rocks. So I don't want to be on my own Null Rod effects. But even if someone slams one down, I'm like, cool, let's slow the whole game down. And I'm going to just smack you all to death with my zombies until somebody, and they will, somebody inevitably removes the Null Rod or the Collector Roof. And then I slam my Altar of Dementia or my Phyrexian Altar. We're on Oops All Altars. I almost named the deck that. We're on Altar of Dementia, Phyrexian Altar, and Ashnod's Altar, you know?
Yeah.
So, and anyway, so back to these win cons. So we have Altar of Dementia.
Very last thing, just because I'm really enjoying this conversation. That's one thing I have to say about the Stax players, and this is why I love playing against Stax players in all of my lists, because your best tool as a Stax player in those is your patience, is understanding somebody will remove the Stax piece, and then you will have a window to win. But if you sat there and wasted all your resources doing dirtily things, and you didn't just sit there and just wait it out and just pick your points to interact here and there, you will lose. But like, just understand, there's been so many games I've won because it's just like, yeah, you dropped that turn 2 of good job. And the game keeps going on. I got a Smother and Tithe out, or I got all these rocks. I keep casting my rocks. I keep doing my thing. And they just say, like, no one's paying for Smother and Tithe, or no one's paying me attention because I'm like, what are you doing to you? I'm like, what do you think? Like, somebody's going to remove the Stax piece. I'm just chilling. I ain't got nothing else to do. And they're not hitting you because it's like, bro, he hasn't done anything in the last 5 turns. And then you just win the game. Everybody's like, damn. Oh shit, we should have thought about this. Oh shit, we thought about this. It's like, hey y'all, it's all good. You know, like, it's not saying stacks are bad. It's, you have to be aware. That's why when Noda or Jetmir are so powerful, because they're stacks pieces, but they actually can turn the corner and take use of the we can't do anything phase of the game, which is maybe that turn 2 to turn 5. But once you get to turn 5, 6, 7, people have lands and other things to cast what they want to. There's only so long that stacks piece is going to stop them before it's just like, oh shit. I stacked them out for 5 or 6 turns, but it's just like, that's all I did. I just gave the game to somebody else. So that's just a common play pattern. But go ahead.
What did we just talk about, right? I'm like Jetmir. Like I mean, not exactly, obviously, and there's a bunch of differences, but I'm already playing like Jetmir, where I just want to smash you with a bunch of dudes. And so in a lot of ways, I agree with you. It's like someone slams an early stacks piece, and basically even a Trinisphere, but outside of like, it's really like Trinisphere. And the big one, obviously, we talked about was Draneth. But it's really like those. Draneth is the worst. Trinisphere is like okay, and that kind of sucks because Kinnan is on Trinisphere right now, so you do see it in the meta. But it's not very common outside of Kinnan. Outside of those, all the other stacks pieces, I'm just like, cool, let's go. You know, like, all you're doing is giving me the opportunity to play cards that I didn't register in my list, but I would probably play anyways. Right. So I agree with you. Like, yeah.
No, 100%. Yeah, like it's that dilemma of playing stacks, but what we do know though is that this deck is still viable through all that. So how are we winning through these stacks? Yeah. What are these actual win cons? Talk to me, brother.
Cool. So the big one seems pretty obvious, right? You make a fuck ton of zombies and you kill people with them. You turn them sideways. All right. 100%. So the combo. What's the big problem with doing that though? Well, they don't have haste. So what cards in mono blue have haste? So I went down this whole wormhole and I tried to figure out all these spicy things. And for a little while I had like Wonder, you know, the incarnation that you can, if it's in your graveyard and you control an island, all your creatures have flying. Like, I was like doing different ways to like basically make my creature-based combo or creature-based attacks really powerful. Okay. And that's just not a great game plan. I found it was like a bit too slow, very telegraphed. If anybody drops a Toxic Deluge or a Psych Rift or whatever, you know, they really kind of blow you out. And mind you still have the Toxic Deluge paying like 20 life because these dudes get huge. But the other day we were playing and literally someone Toxic Deluge were X with 17 and, you know, sent us all to the Stone Age. So whatever, I still made a bunch more dudes. But what I found is that because they don't have haste, I need a way to use them as a resource, right? Okay. So one way you could give him haste is the card Crashing Drawbridge. It's like an artifact creature that you tap.
Oh,
and it says
yeah. I
haste
know
till end of
about
turn.
Yeah, it's like 2 mana.
Yeah, but the bad thing about that card is it doesn't have haste. So we're in the same problem. If I try to cast it that turn, it still doesn't do anything for me for what I want to do.
Yeah.
So, you know, I cut that plan from the way the deck was built. And instead, I kept thinking through it, and I was like, well, why don't I just throw these zombies at people, forcing them to be milled for the size of the zombies? I was like, is that even viable? Because mill is bad, right? In cEDH, you're just gonna like help somebody's breach plan or whatever. You know what's not bad though is when you have 100 power on board and you can just one-shot someone. So you kind of hold the Altered Dementia the way that someone with like 70 life holds an Aetherflux Reservoir.
Yeah.
Where it's a gun to the table, where you're just like, fuck around and find out. Like, you want to, you know, remove my really good thing that I've got on board? Cool, you're dead next turn, because I'm going to eat everything, mill you all the way out, you're going to draw and lose. And a lot of times, once I get going, it's so much more than 100 power. Like,
Yes.
when we do some playtest hands, you'll start to see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's to the point where I have tokens, right? I have old school badass Christopher Rush zombie tokens, but I don't really use those a lot. And what I use is infinite tokens that I put a cross through the middle of it, like a 4 square, and I have to write the number of +1/+1 counters on them because of how many I start making. So each infinite token represents 4 zombies. And on board, there will be like 10 separate infinite tokens. So it's 40 zombies, each one with like 10, 15, 20, 30, +1/+1 counters. I mean, it gets out of control quickly.
Wow.
So that's one way to win with it. And obviously, you can't target the One Ring player, but if what you're worried about is someone untapping and winning on their upkeep, even if they've been milled, or let's say they, I don't know, have a shuffle
type,
an Eldrazi or whatever, like things like that, you can respond to the shuffle by continuing to eat their whole deck. And with Fairy Mastermind, you know, either flash it in if it wasn't there already, or if it's in play, make everybody draw a card, right? So that's like a workaround.
100%. Yes.
You also have a lot of ways to make a lot of mana once you have a lot of zombies. And the way you do that is through the other altars, the Phyrexian altar and the Ashmaz altar. Each one just says sacrifice a creature, add 1 mana of any color, or sacrifice a creature, add 2 colorless mana. So they both have their pros and cons, but essentially they're just outlets, which we're no stranger to these cards. They're broken magic cards.
100%.
You know, anytime that you can sacrifice without tapping or paying any sort of cost, it's pretty powerful. So those are outlets for the combo that allow you to then make a bunch of mana to then trigger Fairy Mastermind a bunch of times or do a bunch of mana intensive things, right?
Yes.
So back to the actual win cons, Fairy Mastermind is one of them, and we talked about this one gets around the One Ring. So that again comes back to what I mentioned about each deck I brew tries to have at least one way to get around the One Ring. This is that way because it says each player, not target player. Now, separate from this, we have Savor the Moment and we have Temporal Trespass. There are a lot of other ways to take extra turns in cEDH. Mono Blue can kind of do it, maybe the second best. I would say Mono Red is the best because you get Final Fortune effects, and in my opinion, those are just better. I wish I could be on those effects. But in Mono Blue, you get take extra turn spells that are dirt cheap. So Savor the Moment is the actual cheapest Time Walk effect that isn't Time Walk. And some people will argue and be like, well, what about Temporal Manipulation or Mastery, whatever, the miracle one? Sure, there's that one where if you flip it, you pay 1 blue or 2 or 1 and a blue or whatever, you take an extra turn. It's literal Time Walk. It's like the exact mana cost of Time Walk when you flip it. But that's just, you know, that's magical Christmas land. We're not always going to be able to have a way to put it on top of our deck. We're not going to always have a way to have it be the first card we draw for turn, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
You know, there's a reason, there it is, Temporal Mastery. So there's a reason why I'm not on this card, even though I thought about it.
Yeah.
Savor the Moment is just 3 mana, take an extra turn. And for this deck, that card just wins you the game.
Yes.
The next line is flavor text. It says something to the effect of skip something or other. Who cares? I don't read it because it doesn't matter. All right. Sure, you skip your untap step, but who needs an untap step when I can just have infinite power on board and smush your soul into the earth? Okay.
Exactly.
Then there's Temporal Trespass, which also only costs me 3 blue mana. Right? Sure, it costs 11, but we just fill our yard with cantrips.
Yes.
Everything goes to my yard, and then it's 3 blue, take an extra turn, win the game.
Gotcha.
So those are the other win cons. And then the last one is I took a page out of the big 5-color kind of good stuff decks book, which is I'm playing Praetor's Grasp. Excuse me. I mean, I'm playing Mnemonic Betrayal. No, excuse me. I'm playing Arcane Heist.
Okay.
It essentially does the same thing that both those cards do, which is I run out of win cons, but I don't lose the game because I still have this backup plan, right? It's the call an ambulance, but not for you meme. And it's because, sure, I could be, my Altered Dementia got countered, my Fairy Mastermind gets countered, I don't have a way to take extra turns, or I don't have enough power to kill you. Cool, let's Arcane Heist. And Arcane Heist, or any card with Cypher, in a deck like this, is so busted. I can't stress this enough, because it's 2 spell casts, and all this deck is trying to do is dirtle around in Manual Storm and make a bunch of dudes. So this card, at its floor, does that, right? It's 4 mana. You may cast target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost, which is huge. And if that spell would be put into their graveyard, exile it instead. So it says 4 mana, cast. So that's one trigger. Right. Then you grab a card out of their yard, pass that. That's another trigger. Then you cipher it, which just means you attach it to a creature, and obviously you want to attach to a creature that doesn't have summoning sickness, like Geralf usually.
Yep.
You swing, you turn sideways, you connect with somebody, and then you cast the original copy again, so that's your 3rd spell cast, and then you cast another card out of the yard, so that's 4 spell casts. So this card essentially reads, make somewhere in the range of like 10 to 20 power of zombies just on its one singular piece of cardboard. But also it acts at its ceiling as a Mnemonic Betrayal or a Praetor's Grasp, because you're going to lose the game because you don't have another way to win, but someone else had a Final Fortune in their yard that got countered, or whatever. Name any other good card that you want to use to try to win the game. A Brain Freeze, after you've just stormed the hell off and then you Brain Freeze the table or whatever, right? So you can kind of see how these win cons are very compact, and there's even a world where maybe I cut one of these. Like maybe Arcane Heist isn't quite good enough because it still costs 4 mana, which is a lot. So yeah, that's the win con package.
100%. Okay, cool. Well, I love these win con package. I especially love that 3 of them are sorceries, meaning that in our colors we have, well, actually 4 of them are pretty good access because we're in blue. We do have a lot of access to artifact tutors, but as well we have mystical tutor and other ways to get access to these sorceries. So talk to me about our tutor package, because we have to get to these win cons after, whether it is maybe not drawing our deck, but we have infinite mana, have infinite zombies, but we got to tutor these. So how do we get to these cards, bro?
Yeah, really glad you brought that up. And this is another spicy, I know I keep saying that, oh, this is another unique thing about this deck. And this deck is super unique. So there's going to be a bunch of interesting and weird, unique things about it. Remember, we're holding Prio out here, right? So the unique thing here in this tutor package is that you're really not on a lot. I did a whole bunch of testing. I really tried Personal Tutor. I really tried Fabricate. I really tried Whir of Invention. I tried Transmute Artifact and Reshape and Infetters Fair from a land base. I also went the route of trying to play cards like Solve the Equation and things like that, right? And out of all of those cards, the 2 that are the closest to possibly being played would be like Solve the Equation or Transmute Artifact, because they're the most powerful, just like in a vacuum on their own. I always look at cards as, sure, their ceiling's awesome. What's the floor? What's the fail case when I got nothing on board and I'm doing fucking jack shit and all I need is that top deck and I rip the top card of my library? If I rip the top card of my library and it's a Whir of Invention and I have no artifacts in play and I only have 2 blue pips, well, this card is a blank. So that's what I need to be kind of thinking about a lot of times. So this tutor package and the way it works is, sure, it's 3 tutors, but let's also really keep in mind that I'm out here playing Legacy. I'm playing Vintage. I'm playing Modern. I'm not playing cEDH. And the reason why I say that is I'm playing cantrips. And cEDH decks don't really do that. We're playing 12 cantrips in this deck, and they are all equally busted. I think the worst out of all of them essentially is Consider. But I mean, we are on Brainstorm, Preordain, Ponder, Consider, Git Probe, Skull Clamp, which for the record is just bonkers. 3 steps ahead, which is draw 2, discard 1, as far as a cantrip goes. Of One Mind, which says 1 blue mana, draw 2, because you always have a zombie and you always have a human in Geralf. Windfall, which obviously we refill with. Meeting of the Minds, which you convoke, so that's 0 mana, draw 2. And I know you're about to say to yourself, wait a second, these zombies don't convoke for blue mana because zombies are black. No, for whatever reason, when Wizards decided to make this card, they made the zombies blue-black rogue zombies for some reason. So these zombies are different than all other zombies in the history of Magic, and they happen to be blue. I know there's some zombies from Innistrad that were blue, but these are the only token zombies that are blue, right?
Right.
So this one's free and it draws 2. Then you have Gut, free, draw 2. Then you have Treasure Cruise, 1 blue mana, draw 3. So you have a lot of ways to just turn through your deck, and while you're turning, you're making more zombies, which are winning you the game. And the floor on all of these cards are, let me just see more cards, right? So for the tutor package, I like to think about those cantrips as kind of like, almost like every 2 cantrips or 3 cantrips, let's call it like 1 extra tutor, if you can think about it that way. So instead of playing 3 tutors, I'm playing like 6 or 7, because I'm playing enough cantrips to even out the difference. 100%. Obviously, we're on Mystical Tutor. Finds me all the good stuff, finds me a bunch of clones, finds me interaction, finds me mana. We're on Merchant Scroll specifically because it's cheap enough. It finds me all the blue instants, and of which there's 1, and I've done this purposefully, there's 1 of every single thing I need in a blue instant. And I did this specifically because I'm on Merchant Scroll. So what that means is, obviously there's counterspells, there's interaction and mana ramp in the form of Snap, because that's essentially mana ramp. If you have like an Ancient Tomb or City of Traders, you can go up mana off of that.
Exactly.
You have Frantic Search, which does kind of a similar thing. Then you have all the cantrips, which you can find off of Merchant Scroll. Some of them are free, some of them are just better but not free. And then you also have the ability to find a land, which is kind of busted from MH3. You can now find Sink into Stupor off of Merchant Scroll. So I've done that. Like, I've just been like, I need a land drop for the turn, so I'm just gonna tutor for my land drop. And this is another reason why I'm on so few lands, and it's because why would I play lands when they've just been printing more and more cards that are like pseudo lands that are already good, and now they can be found off tutors, right?
Yeah,
you can find
real.
a land off a Mystical Tutor, right?
That's
It's
real.
crazy. So that card is really, really a big upgrade. And then obviously one of the other really big ones is Chain of Vapor. And Chain of Vapor specifically in this deck is just kind of wild. I mean, you just target all your own stuff, bounce it all back, sack all your lands, and then crack your Surveyor Scope. And I know you know about Surveyor Scope because I watched your Tameshi's video.
Yes.
Surveyor Scope goes hard in the paint. Surveyor Scope says, let's get 3 islands into play untapped in your mono blue deck. And one more reason why I'm on 24 lands. Who needs them when I got a Surveyor Scope, right? It's almost good and I'm not playing a lot of lands, right?
Yeah. I definitely hear you there, and man, that with that explanation, it makes me feel more comfortable with the smaller density, because blue let's not act like blue doesn't offer a shit ton of like tutors. It's not like maybe red or like some of the other monocolored, like that just like we're just suffering on like the tutors that we need. We have to start playing bad tutors. No, blue has the optional for tutors, and we're running enough artifacts where we may want to run those. But I love your intentionality of saying, look, I play tested them, they're playable, but I don't want to have top deck to win the game or top deck last turn. Oh man, this can get me somewhere, but I don't have enough the pips to draw it or to play it, or it just becomes a blank card because, as you said, like it doesn't get me exactly where I need to be. So with that being said, you start to talk about some card draw, starting off with the cantrips. And so talk to me about your card draw package. If we're not tutoring, how we seeing more cards? Talk to me, brother.
Sure. Yeah, I'll jump into that. The very last thing I really quick do want to say, though, is on Spellseeker, which is the only one we didn't touch on.
Oh, yes, please.
It almost seems like, why would you be on Spellseeker when you probably should be on whatever, like fill in the blank? And the big reason is because Spellseeker, along with now with 3 Steps Ahead and some other kind of busted card like a Mystic Reflection, Spellseeker can now not only get me card draw, counter spells, or mana ramp, it now can also get me a clone effect, because 3 Steps Ahead is technically 1 CMC, even though you cast it for more. It's the whole ad nauseam thing. And same thing with Mystic Reflection. So the other crazy part about it is, what Spellseeker is? It's a human. And you know what Roaming Throne gets named in this deck? Human. Because I don't care about triggering zombies, I care about triggering Geralf, who's a human. So there's definitely been turns where I've just had a Roaming Throne in play, cast a Spellseeker, and my opponents are like, sure, what are you gonna get? And I'm like, well, I'm gonna just probably get interaction or a clone effect or whatever. They're like, all right, it lands, and I get 2 of them. And yeah, that's good. So it's kind of like, it's the worst of the bunch, but it's still pretty good and has enough synergies to the point where I was on like Trophy Mage, Trinket Mage, something Tribute Mage. I was on some of those effects.
All the mages.
Yeah. Yeah, I was on some mages to get the 3 CMC and the 2 CMC ones, because what I wanted to grab was Phyrexian Altar, Ashnod's Altar, Altar Dementia, right? The altars, when you see altars in the mid game, quote unquote mid game, turn 2, when you see the altars in the mid game, you're like, all right, we out here, we doing it. You're just like, jam the altar, like pop off, you know, because that's the way you turbo with this deck. But I just found it was, you know, I'll just see the cards anyways. I have so many cantrips. So to that point, let's jump to the cantrips.
Yeah, and I just want to, if I could throw this very, very quick last thing in. I agree with the use of Roaming Throne Spellseeker. Another thing that I find very common with my Satya list is Delny, Streetwise Look At, and Roaming Throne. It's just the epitome of like, dude, like we're just playing the game on easy at this point, dude. What the fuck do you want me to say? Like, I love the use of double tutoring.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, like
I'm telling you, I am so close to finishing, like cracking open this mono white Delny in the command zone list. And we got to say that for another day, obviously. But once it gets there, once it's good enough, once I've really, really smoothed out the tutor lines and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's gonna be gross. But yeah, Delny is a broken Magic card, dude. What were you thinking? That card's so good.
It's for no fucking reason, dude. Just broken for no reason. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get into that chain. We'll talk about that later on our Satya update video. For now, we're gonna talk about our cantrips and our draw engines first. You've already talked about the cantrips, but if we could just quickly go over the most important ones, or any synergy lines, or if you just want to get straight into the card draw.
Yeah, first really important thing is when you're playing the cantrip cartel, as it's colloquially known in Legacy, which is Brainstorm, Preordain, and Ponder. They're the 3 best cantrips in all of Magic. Obviously, you can't include Ancestral Recall in that because it's not really a cantrip. It's just 1 mana, you win the game. But Brainstorm, Preordain, and Ponder, if you're ever playing the cantrip cartel, this is a must, okay? And this is really important. I want you listeners to really listen up here.
Okay.
You have to play them in a way that is completely unreadable. Okay, so you have to play versions of these cards that are completely textless and full art and like drawn, acid trip, no words. So that's why I'm on that Brainstorm, that Ponder, and that Preordain. And anyone who knows me knows that I actually am playing these real cards in paper. Okay. Now,
I love this, bro.
I would say,
Go on, bro.
Yeah, I would say of note. Kind of the rest of it all makes sense, right? You just want to cantrip a bunch. Gataxia Probe, you look at people's hands, is amazing. Ponder, Preordain, and Brainstorm each let you see 3 cards possibly, whereas Ponder technically lets you see 4. You could look at the 3, choose to shuffle, and then see the 4th. But Skull Clamp is one that I was actually not on until recently. As weird as that sounds, because it's like, you're making a bunch of dudes and you're gonna die. But the thing is, they don't have 1 power. They have a bunch, or 1 toughness. They have a bunch of toughness.
Yeah.
What I started to realize, though, is I am really sacrificing lots of creatures in this deck.
Okay.
And the really big thing that sold me on it is the fact that it's generic mana that gets dumped into it. It's only 1 mana to begin with, and it's 1 to equip. And so sometimes it's just a value piece. You just put it on a 2/2 zombie, turn it into a 3/1, and now no one can attack you because they're going to draw you 2 cards. Or you're pushing lethal on someone, another forced to chump, and they kind of it forces these weird exchanges where like you get to be in the driver's seat. But then the biggest synergy piece, so that's the floor, the biggest synergy piece in the ceiling is, okay, so now what happens when you have a sacrifice outlet on there?
I was just about to bring that up. Yeah, if you have one of your altars out, like Ashnod's Altar or Phyrexian Altar, at that point all that says is like, all right, I'm gonna equip it for 1, sack it, make either 1 mana, 1 blue mana, or 2 colorless mana, and then draw 2 cards, use the mana I just generated to move it to the next zombie, and then just, does this draw your whole deck or close to it?
Yeah, it draws your whole deck. I mean, it's not technically deterministic, but it draws your whole deck. I mean, you just imagine the world where all you have is 4 zombies in play, right? And they're all obviously at least 2 toughness. Okay, so the Skull Clamp doesn't kill it itself. So you equip the Skull Clamp on 1, you have to start with 1 mana. So let's say you had no mana. Okay, well, you just sack one of the zombies to start with to make the mana. So really, it's a self-contained loop. Like, you sack a zombie, you make the mana. Let's say you have 0 mana, you have one of the altars. Let's choose the worst of the 2 in this situation, which would be Phyrexian Altar, because it makes only 1 mana instead of 2. So you're not going mana positive, you're mana neutral, because it costs 1 to continuously activate Skull Clamp. So you sack the first of the 4 zombies, right? You now, with that blue mana, equip the Skull Clamp. All right? Now, you sack that zombie, you draw 2 cards, you make a blue mana, and if somehow you just drew 2 blanks, of which, as a reminder, we're only at 24 lands, so we don't have a lot of blanks, you are hard to do in this deck because there's so many cheap like kind of cantrippy, spin your wheel sorts of things. But let's say you just draw 2 islands and it's blank. Fine. Just use that mana, re-equip to the 3rd zombie, sack that zombie, draw 2 more cards. So you could do this technically 3 times where the loop starts with 0 mana at all in the pool. You could draw 6 fucking cards, and that's just with 4 zombies. And that might feel to the listener like, wait, well, how did you have 4 zombies to start? Well, that's what the deck does. You go turn 1, Geralf, make a couple zombies, or turn 2, your Geralf you played on 1, now you make a couple zombies. So like, there's kind of like this. I used to play these mental games in my mind when I was goldfishing of like, okay, well, what happens if this gets countered or blah, blah, you know, it's like, well, I can tell you from actually playing the deck, you have zombies. You just have a bunch of dumb idiots in play. It's just
right.
It's just what the deck does, right? So yeah, the loop there just draws your whole deck essentially, because all you have to then do is cast any of your free spells or any of your cheap spells, and now that just made you a zombie, which now makes you mana, and it just continues to go on, right? Ashnod's Altar goes mana positive, so you draw your whole deck and make a fuck ton of generic mana.
Wow.
Skullclamp's busted. I don't know how it took me so long to be on it.
No. Sometimes it happens, or sometimes you talking to the community, or you just talking to a homie, and they just like, "Have you thought about Skullclamp?" And you saying like, "What the fuck is this guy talking about?" You just like, "What are you talking?" And you keep an open mind. You're like, "All right, talk to me. Where I need to get convinced." And they just walk you through the line. And you just say, "You're like, you know what? That may be good on my list." And just over time, piece by piece, it turns from this idea into this actual juggernaut of a card in your deck. So I love the inclusion after the explanation. I was wondering, because I'm like, bro, you know, there are 2/2 zombies, right? Like, this is not this is not Tavesh. Like, these are not 0/1 throws. So no, I love the inclusion after that explanation. I love that. Well, keep talking card draw. Keep talking, brother.
Cool. Yeah, the last rule, everything else kind of just makes sense, right? Gush, we're on basically as many bases as we'd be on. And we'll talk about this when we get to the land base, but you'll notice what I'm not on. And I'm not on Manamo, okay? And I'm not on Cephalid Coliseum. And those are good Magic cards, and you should be on those cards. And the reason why I'm not is because I need as high of an island count as I can be on. I only recently got off High Tide. High Tide was good in this deck, but it wasn't like the broken I win the game good like it is in other sorts of styles of decks. And so I got off High Tide, and when I did, I went down some islands and I went up Cephalid Coliseum and Manamo. You know what happened? I found that Gush is pretty fucking hard to cast for free when one of your islands that used to be an island in play is now a Cephalid Coliseum. It just sucks. Like, it's just, and I don't want to hit those fail cases with my cantrips. It's okay to hit those fail cases for win conditions because you'll eventually get there, but when the grease, like the lubrication of the deck, which is cantrips, doesn't work, then that's bad.
Hey,
Hey, get your head out of the gutter, man. We were only talking about the Dune popcorn bucket. It's just a little bit. You know what? I asked for extra butter, and that's what the cantrips are. Just a little extra butter on top, baby.
Okay, we got to come in around full circle, y'all. The deck name is not just a joke. It's full circle, y'all. Full circle. Keep going, though, brother. Keep going, brother. It's because
of playtest experience. So yeah, Gush, you return the islands to your hand, and you know what else is really good with Gush? Surveyor Scope. So you bounce 2 islands to your hand, then you crack your Surveyor Scope, and now you don't have as many lands in play, and now you get 3 more islands in play. So it's like mana positive. Actually, it's kind of just bonkers. Gush is so good. Treasure Cruise. I'm purposely only using the graveyard in this deck with 2 cards, and the only 2 cards I'm using the graveyard in this deck are Treasure Cruise and Temporal Trespass. Take an extra turn.
Yeah.
So because of that, and I found that that's about right. There was a little while where I was trying to be on what's the name of that card?
Not the Murk side.
Really good in Pioneer. No. It's the Treasure Cruise alternative. It's an instant. It's 6 mana blue.
Y'all drop it in chat. Drop it in chat. Which one are we thinking about? I know it's not Del. It is Del card, but I can't remember what the. It's not Treasure. Fuck.
Anyways,
it'll come to mind. Y'all drop it in chat. Drop it in chat, y'all.
Basically, you get the opportunity. Yeah, you get the opportunity to look at the top 7 cards of your library, I think, and then grab 2 of them and put them in your hand. So it's essentially a cantrip. It doesn't draw cards, but it's a cantrip. It's 1 card that turns into 2 cards. Yeah. That card's really good, and I keep going back and forth on should I be on that or should I be on Treasure Cruise. What I found is when I'm on both and I'm on Temporal Trespass, sometimes I'm eating too much of the graveyard and it's self-cannibalistic, and I don't have as many ways to fill my own yard. Sure, I guess I could aim my own altered dimension triggers at myself, but as we talked about earlier, I don't really want to be on a self-mill plan.
Yeah.
And so it just didn't feel like the right path. So yeah, I mean, that's just gonna dig through time. That's what it's called. Just
There, thank you. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah. So dig through time would be the other option, which, you know, like I said, I wouldn't fault anybody. You know, if anybody out there, one of the 100 other people that want to play this deck, I know, but if anybody out there wants to play this deck, those are the sorts of things you can, you know, tune and mess around with or whatever.
Yeah.
So and then the last really big one, of course.
If I could add one comment on dig through time, I definitely can see how tough of a decision that can be, because I love instant speed enablers, but for your like when you think about it all the way through, it's cool to be able to do this on somebody's instant, but you want to do this on your turn. So it's kind of counterintuitive. Like, what am I? Yes, I'm seeing more cards, and it's a hard decision. And plus, you have to pay 2 blue pips for the instant speed version. So yeah, I'm seeing where your head's at right now. It's a hard decision, but I think you're on the right.
Yeah, and we are on a lot of generic mana too. Like when your Ashnod's Altar gets going, and when you have a City of Traders and an Ancient Tomb, and you know, you have these different, you know, generic mana producers in the deck. It's better to have a Treasure Cruise because it's only 1 blue pip, and that's really what you're gated by is the blue mana in this deck. Like, that's one of the things that really does gate it in a lot of ways. So yeah, those are all the cantrips. I mean, you could, I guess technically you could look at Repeal as a cantrip as well.
Yeah.
In the board interaction section, because it does replace itself only, but it doesn't see additional cards. Secretly Repeal is, again, one of the very powerful cards in this deck because it acts like Chain of Vapor.
Yes.
It's in the top section under Bees for board interaction.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, it's just, I would say the cantrip suite is pretty obvious and generic. There's nothing in here that's like, oh, why are you playing that? Of One Mind, I guess, is the only one that people might not even know what this card does. It's like a Pauper All-Star. By the way, I love Pauper. I forgot to mention that's like a format I spend a lot of energy playing. But yeah, Of One Mind really just says 1 blue mana, draw 2, because you always have a zombie and a human in play. So you have a human and a non-human. So it's just kind of 1 blue mana, draw 2. It's just, that's too good. You can't. If Divination cost 1 blue, I would play it. And what's funny is in my sideboard, there's a card called Omen, and no one knows what this card does, but I will tell you, it is Ponder. It literally does the identical text to Ponder. It's look at the top 3, put them back in any order, draw a card. You may shuffle them though first.
Okay.
And it costs 1 extra mana. So instead of it costing just blue. 1 blue, it costs generic and a blue.
Gotcha.
And it's from some old set like Portal or something like that. Yeah. So it's good enough. I thought about playing it for quite a while, but it didn't quite make the cut. And then Windfall, most decks are not on wheel packages unless like it makes sense to do it. Like, it's just not great. What I found though is it's nice. Yeah, it's just nice to have a backup plan in your back pocket where, you know, the game kind of gets away from you, or you had a mulligan really low, and you can then take the reins a little bit better with your Mystical Tutor. So you actually have an out in Mystical Tutor to be able to just like blow up everybody's hands and start again. Gotcha. And then the reason why I'm on that and not Twister or Echo is because I want at least something in the yard for both Treasure Cruise and Temporal Trespass, but also I kind of want stuff in other people's yards for that win con that we talked about earlier of Arcane Heist.
Exactly.
You want their instance sorceries out of the yard. So that's what that's for.
Okay. That all definitely makes sense. Like, and I'm also like, I also see that, of course, you're talking about you have your generic card draw package as well. So you're not like I love how you're paying homage to the formats you came from the 60 card formats with the cantrips, but also you've thrown a lot of respect to the cEDH format, which still running Fish. We're still running Ristic Study, the One Ring, and even Steel Enchantment, leaning on the fact that we're all trying to play good cards. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely I love the balance between.
Steel Enchantment has been an overperformer. I was on Copy Enchantment as well for a while, but it just it felt like a bit much. You know, you got to make cuts somewhere, and I'm playing a bunch of quote unquote bad cards, so you have to find room for bad cards, and so those are the cards you cut are the least good cards. And Copy Enchantment is a generically good card, but it's not as generically good as Ristic Study, right? Or Steel Enchantment, or you know, Mystic or One Ring. So it's the one that got cut. But yeah, it's also a very good card.
Okay. I like it. No, I do like it. It's basically you pay for, like, I mean, you at that point you're choosing between, do I want to take your Ristic Study or do I want to copy your Ristic Study? If I have to, unless I'm playing Marnius and Smothering Tide, I'd rather take your Ristic Study because I don't want you to draw any cards. So yeah, I definitely hear you there, brother. Right. It makes a lot of sense. Okay. Well, yeah, you touched on a lot of great card draw effects. Are there any other things you'd want to touch on for this great card draw package that we have for this Dune bucket list?
No, not for the card draw. I think probably just like the mana side of things is kind of something that's it's what allows the cantrips to continue to happen, right? It was what allows the storm to storm on, right?
Got you. Okay. Well, we'll talk about the mana in a sec. I did want to ask about your removal and interaction package for a second, because we got these great win cons. We have ways to get there with a mixture of a small tutor package and an amazing card draw package. But let me let me hear, like, how are we interacting with the board while we're before we're pushing for a win on, whether it be turn 2 or turn 5 or whatever that may be.
Yeah, you got it. Odawara, good card, costs 3 in this deck because you lose the game if you're not playing your commander. So you always have your commander out, and it costs 3.
Cool.
And it's, you can get through all the stuff, right? We all know why Odawara is good. You can do it through a Grand Abolisher and everything else.
Yeah.
Chain of Vapor, although it is in this section, it is only because technically it should be.
Technically,
but
right.
As I mentioned before, I cannot remember the last time I cast this on somebody else's thing. There are just so many times where you put it on somebody else's whatever, it doesn't matter. Unless that thing is winning the game, you just shouldn't, because then first of all, they're never going to aim it back at your stuff unless it's something that's going to really, really hurt you to bounce off the board, which in this deck, there's not a lot that really hurts us when it gets bounced. But like, I don't know, let's imagine I'm trying to go off and I target somebody else's thing, and then they go back and target my Dune popcorn bucket, but I'm like at a moment where I'm gated by mana. Well, then I can't recast it, and we're fizzling. So I'm always aiming this at my own stuff. So this should really be under more of like a storm and kind of engine section, because it really, or mana production. I think I actually put it in the mana production section first. Like when I was doing the tags, I was like, oh, Chain of Vapor, mana. It's like, wow, Chain of Vapor and see that this is a bounce spell, right? Repeal, I mentioned about this before, card is so good in this deck. Most of my really powerful early turns, like my openers when I see 7, are cards that are openers that have some kind of like Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, or Mana Vault, or like those sorts of cards, and they happen to have a repeal. If I see those together, I'm like, oh, I get best of both worlds, right? I get to cantrip with repeal. I also get to go up additional mana because I tap the Mana Crypt, pay 1 blue, bounce to my hand, replay it. Now that's 2 spells. So if you count the first spell as being the Mana Crypt being cast for the first place, you go cast Mana Crypt, tap it for 2, pay 1 blue, bounce the Mana Crypt, replay the Mana Crypt. That's now 3 storm, and I've redrawn a card, and I now have 4 colorless mana in my mana pool, and it only cost me a repeal and a blue mana. So you can imagine how that creates these kind of storming off effects.
Yes.
It also does some really interesting things with clones, where you play. That's why I'm not afraid to play early clones on bad cards. Like, imagine somebody else has an Esper Sentinel in play. Do you really want to be cloning that in a deck like this? Yes, actually. Yes, you don't just try to turbo off. You clone somebody's Esper Sentinel and pass, because I know I'm on Chain of Vapor, I know I'm on Repeal, I know I'm on Snap, I know I'm on Sink into Stupor, and Odawara even. And in fact, Odawara, some people out there refer to as the treasure bouncer. That's an inside joke for our Tucson crew, because some individual actually literally had to bounce a treasure with it one time in order for us to not lose the game.
Okay.
Big shout out to the homie Fish. But yeah, Repeal is awesome. Repeal is just so powerful, so broken. It does all the things I want to do. I wish there were more cards like this, frankly, that were instant speed, bounce stuff, and drew cards. I wouldn't even care if they cost a little more. Like, they're just so good. Another really big thing is all right, yeah, later, Ray. Another really big powerful thing is Snap. So Snap, again, this is a way to go up mana while also bouncing.
Yes.
And Snap's just good. Snap's a good card. You bounce somebody else's thing and you go up mana. Awesome. And in this deck, it's free, right? It's just 0 mana. Essentially, this card should say Storm 1, and that's it. And then sometimes Storm 1 adds some mana, right? What's really good about Snap is that when you're trying to pop off, almost all the time, what you want to do is untap certain sorts of lands. Exactly. So you can imagine a world where I have 2 tapped islands, and I have, I don't know, an untapped Urza Saga and like a Phyrexian Altar. So I have one colorless producer on board that's available, and I have a Phyrexian Altar, and there's only one zombie out. If the only card in my hand is Snap, we get to go off because I sack the zombie for blue, I tap the Urza Saga for the generic mana, I snap somebody's thing, now I untap my 2 islands, and we make a zombie. Now that zombie represents additional mana off the Phyrexian Altar, so now I essentially have 3 blue mana available when just a moment earlier all I had was 1 generic and 1 blue. It kind of is a filtering agent where it like filters generic mana into blue mana. It's pretty powerful. Obviously, really good with City of Traders, really good with Ancient too, where if you untap those, it's mana positive.
Gotcha.
So that's why we're playing that. And then Steel Enchantment, this is just, we talked about it, this is generic good board interaction. All the good things right now are enchantments, and we're even getting new good enchantments. Like there's, Power Balance now, and there's Necro Dominance now, and there's some other good stuff. And we're not seeing a huge amount of it yet, but they're just good. You know what else is really sick to steal with a Steel Enchantment? I don't know, Urza Saga, because it's already on a ticked up chapter. So then when it comes to you, it almost always goes and tutors another card. And that's, by the way, I forgot to put Urza Saga in my tutors section. I just changed it right now. But that's another really great tutor in this deck because it finds you the Skull Clamp. It finds you the mana positive things. And on top of everything else, it just goes up mana to blue mana because it always gets you a Mox Amber or a Mox Diamond or a Mox Opal or a Lotus Petal. Like there's always something to find off of it. So stealing other people's Urza Sagas is hot. And if you've never done it, I highly recommend.
I never thought about that. I actually genuinely never thought about that, but I'm gonna have to keep that on mind. Like I always had I took Steel Enchantment out of the one list that I was playing in for a little bit, my Tasker list, because I took it out of took out Sylvan Library, and I was looking for a better draw engine because Sylvan Library wasn't doing it for me because apparently green sucks. It doesn't, green mages. It needs a little help here and there. But
it does.
I tried Steel Enchantment.
Wizards not been giving it love.
Yeah, and I tried Steel Enchantment, and I was like, the game I tried, and it just became like, unless my opponents have an enchantment, it's doing nothing. And so I took it out, but I can see how on a blue list, or even insert, depending on the meta you're playing in, it becomes less and less of a dead card, especially when you're being as creative how you are. You're like, all right, no risk, there's no fish, there's no Ristic Study. I'm just gonna steal your Urza Saga, and I'm gonna take the ramp off of it, or I'm gonna take one of the other vegetable targets off your Urza Saga, and I'm just gonna run with that. You know what I'm saying? I feel like your creativity makes this card a lot better. So I definitely love the inclusion here. Keep going though, brother.
Yeah, well, what's sick too off Urza Saga now in this deck is I'm on Mystic Reflection, which just says choose target creature. The next time a creature would enter the battlefield, it enters as that creature. So you know what I do? I just aim Mystic Reflection at some really powerful creature or one of my Spark doubled Geralfs, like a non-legendary one. Then I activate Urza Saga. So instead of getting a construct, I just got another Spark double, or I just got a Dockside, or I just got, whatever. So that's another really powerful thing that card can do. Mystic Reflection's in the clone section, I think. Yeah. So yeah, that card bonkers. I will just say though, for anybody out there playing, really important to remember that Steel Enchantment cannot be cast. You literally can't even cast the spell if there's not a legal target, which is something I'm always thinking about for this deck. I don't want to play spells that I can't just storm for the sake of storm or prowess for the sake of prowess. You just can't trip off. It's like, well, sometimes I just want to cast anything. It doesn't matter what it is, because I want to make more dudes to sacrifice to, the aforementioned Skull Clamp, Phyrexian Altar, Ashnod's Altar sorts of loops, and continue to go off.
100%.
So just important to remember, you have to have a target. You literally can't even put it on the stack otherwise. And then Sink into Stupor is just, when I saw that card spoiled,
top 5 best lands ever printed on the entire planet, bro.
Dude, it's bonkers, man. Who thought putting Unsubstantiate, an already playable cEDH card, right? This is literally just Unsubstantiate, except for cost 1 more blue mana.
Bro,
and then the backside is an untapped land.
I couldn't take Manamo out of my list fast enough, bro. When I saw this, I'm like, because we all run Manamo now because of the One Ring, but then let's be real. Yeah. How often do you honestly get Manamo and the One Ring out? It happens if you're in green, which we're not in this deck, but of course you can do the crop rotation to intentionally do it. That's all cute. That's great. No shade. This though, I've blown players out purely just if you know how the game works and you see a common line, just you can completely blow a player out. The fact that it hits spells in the stack and non-land permanents, if your meta has a problem with Hullbreaker Horde, this hits it. It's so flexible. It does so much. I can rave about this all fucking day. But go ahead.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. It's so good. Yeah. I mean, but yeah, and in a deck like this, that all we want to do is not see lands. Like, lands are bad, they don't cantrip. Lands are bad, they don't turn into zombies. So you know what this card does? It turns into zombies, and what's really cool about this card is, what I thought for sure when I read it the first time, that it said return target. I thought the first time that I read it, I thought it was like counter target spell or return target non-land permanent to an opponent controls to its owner's hand. But it is truly just unsub. So to your point about Hullbreaker Horror, that is so huge. And also in green decks, there's a lot of ways to make things uncounterable. So you just get around it. You get around Cavernous Souls. You get around the Elf Saurus Shepherd.
Allosaurus Shepherd.
You get around all that.
There's so many things that they have made more interactable now by simply putting a sink in the stupor. Even if you're on the defense and it's like, all right, I have a shit ton of mana and they're for some reason they're going it's a mind break trap, so I'm gonna go sink in the stupor on the mind break trap just so I can turn on my own mind break trap because they have to recast it, or some like, there's very funky creative things you can do where it's like, yes, I get it's 3 mana, but at the same time, if you're storming off and you're already generating a lot of mana, it's very flexible. And it's at its floor, it's an untapped land.
Right.
Like all that talk about what the clone land was like, it's a tap land. I know it's an untapped land for 3 life.
Yep. And we don't use life in this deck literally at all. There's not a single card in this deck that uses our life.
Yeah. No.
So I'm not at fossils, and there's not a single card in this deck that uses. Well, I guess, okay, let me rephrase. There's the one, but literally every deck in the format is the one.
Exactly.
So outside of that, there's not anything in the deck that uses life. So because of that, it's like, it's so easy for me to convince players, like, why are you attacking me? I mean, you're never going to kill me through combat damage because I'm eventually going to clog up the board.
Exactly.
So you're never going to get there that way. So why are you attacking? Attack the Admoss player. Attack the Necro player. Attack the Treasonous Ochre player for all I care. Don't attack me. You know what I mean? Like, Red has used their life more than I do. So, anyways, Sink into Super. Last thing I'll say about it is, as we mentioned before, you can get it off Merchant Scroll. You can get it off Merchant Scroll, and you can get it off Mystical Tutor. So, important to know.
100%. So let's keep talking about removal and interaction. Do we have any other things when it comes to removal and interaction that's notable to touch upon?
No, and I'm really so there's a bunch of interaction that are spell-based interaction. As far as board interaction, that's it. There's just those 6, and in my opinion, it's probably too light, but I'm all gas, no brakes. You can tell by the way I play lands. Okay. So that's just kind of part of the deal. Now, as far as spell-based interaction, I think I put stack interaction or something like that in the S's. So the stack interaction, I have 14 pieces of stack interaction here. Okay. So this is a very, very biased personal opinion, but I am here to tell the world that in cEDH, if you're trying to get away with quote unquote the best blue counter spells, these are them. You are looking at the quote best blue counter spells. 3 Steps Ahead doesn't count as one of the best blue counter spells, and the niche ones, right? So 3 Steps Ahead, Mystic Reflection, and
Days.
Depending on how you look at it, I guess Days. Yeah, those ones I don't think I would really count, right? Mana Drain is also another one where it just happens to be really good in this deck because it's also mana positive. One of my favorite things to do, as you know, the namesake Holden Priority. We're out here holding priority since day one. I came out the world Holden Priority. I popped out and the doctor was like trying to spank me on the back end, to get me to cry, and I just looked at him and I was like, actually I'm holding priority. So that's part of the deal here, I put a 0 mana rock on a stack. Okay, on turn 2, I have 2 islands. I put a 0 mana rock on the stack, like, I don't know, Jeweled Lotus. And in response, I Force of Will it. And in response, I mana drain the Force of Will. Now that the Jeweled Lotus resolves, now I put my commander into play. Now I go to my second main, and you know what I got? 5 generic mana. Let's go. So I love mana drain in this deck. It's super spicy. And obviously it's just great to blow other people out. There's a lot of card advantage engines like we've been talking about, like Smothering Tithe and Heuristics and all these other things. And then on top of that too, it just counters creatures, which is really at a premium right now because a lot of good creatures running around recently. To that same point, Subtlety is such a blowout. Truly, such a blowout.
I agree.
No one sees it coming. It does broken things that people don't really wrap their head around. It's one of those, in my opinion, super spicy things that Subtlety does that people don't realize is that you can tap it to a Springleaf Drum with its sack ability on the stack. So you evoke it, it comes into play, and with the abilities on the stack, you tap it to a Springleaf Drum to make blue mana. So it's 0 mana, make a blue. Another thing it does is energy tap. Pardon me, you can't actually do it with energy tap because energy tap is a sorcery. But Springleaf Drum, you for sure can.
100%.
So yeah, subtlety is another great piece of stack interaction, and it hits creatures.
Yeah,
just really powerful.
Yeah, like I'm looking at your interaction package, and it looks like I'm seeing the standardized part of it, but I'm also seeing a lot of very, very niche inclusions. Like you already talked about 3 steps ahead and days. It's kind of like, I feel like the super fast list who are trying to be aggressive on turn 1, 2, maybe 3 are going to run the days, and so that I definitely understand the inclusion of that. Also, just to breeze over this, I love the inclusion of the hydroelectric specimen if we're in the later game and we just want to protect our commander or whatever else. Just, it's an untapped land on back, guys. Like, is there anything else I need to say? Mono blue, come on.
That's it.
A question.
I mean, that's the whole reason. This could be a 10 mana 2/2. I would still play it.
Oh, I definitely hear there. Well, so quick question there. I'm not seeing the. Well, are you running the draw spell for 7 mana land base?
I'm on Seagate.
Oh, you're on Seagate. Okay, good. That makes sense. Okay. Well, so my question is, when it comes to an interaction package, I'm not seeing a force of negation. So I want to ask you about that and what the thought process behind that was.
Have you seen that meme that's like either I'm sorry to hear that or I'm glad that that's happening to you or whatever? It's like basically I don't have time to pay attention to what you're saying. It's like either good for you or I'm sorry that happened. Like if it's good or if it's bad. That's kind of how I feel. It's like, oh, are you storming off and doing your thing? Is it actively winning the game right in this very moment? Yeah. If no, do it. I don't give a shit. Do it. I'm just smack you in the face with a bunch of zombies. And like that's kind of the mindset that I'm trying to get into when I'm playing. Gotcha. And I found that there were just too many times where I can't cast it on my own turn. And I know that sounds weird because most of the spells you want to counter are on other people's turns, and I'm not even really that worried about protecting my own stack because there's not one single card that just wins the game in this deck. I'm not on Adnon. I'm not on Thoracle. I'm not on Breach. I'm not on, there's no one card that's just like one card, win the game, do the thing, hope it resolves, right? So it's not even that I'm trying to protect my own stack, but again, let's look at Days. You know what Days says to me? It says, oh, I keep missing my land drops and I only have 1 island in play. Nice. I just top decked a Jeweled Lotus, but my commander's already played. You know what I do? I cast the Jeweled Lotus, once again holding priority, and Daze it. I don't give a fuck. Let it get countered. Whatever. Exactly. You know what that did? It made me a zombie, and it also means that I got to float a blue off the island, replay the island. Now I went up mana. And so there's all these moments where if you're playing tight and playing smart and really thinking through your lines, using counter spells as a way to generate your own mana, you can do stuff that people just don't think about. And so Force of Negation can't do any of that.
No, I definitely, that makes 100% sense. And it very much shows the intentionality behind your choice of interaction. It's the same with the offer you can't refuse. To this day, I still have people say to me that counterspell is not good. I don't run it. I don't like giving my opponents resources. I'm like, have you ever offered your own Mox Diamond because you don't have a land in hand? I don't know what the fuck. I've won games off that because I was able to go, all right, I'm gonna turn on my Mox Opal by countering my own Mox Diamond and then push out this turn 1 wheel, draw new 7 cards, play the land drop that I still didn't have in my open hand, and just start pushing that out and just disrupt play. If I'm going turn 2, player 2 at that point, I'm disrupting player 3 and player 4, and I just have to hope that I didn't give the game to player 1. But I'm willing to take that gamble if I'm turn player 2, turn 1 willing. There's so much application. So I really love how all of your counter spells do that. And even though we're not on the Force of Negation, which many can say is a staple, and we're in the mid range of that, I love it in my list because even though when I'm playing in my fast list, I love running Force of Negation because it's free and it's so many times that you can sit here and say it sucks, but it's even if I'm in the faster list like my Satya list, I'm I still play Force of Negation because if I love to be able to tap out. I don't want to have to be able to make the choice. Well, I either gotta tap out or leave 1 mana open for this Swan Song. I'm like, no, I'm trying to win the game. Tap out. I'm trying to pass the turn. I'm gonna draw into this free interaction. But I love how you have the free interaction as well. It stops your opponents, but as well it serves you even more, which allows you to present these turn 2 or whatever else not win. So just love it. I really, really do love it, brother. Very good, very smart.
I wouldn't fault somebody for being on Force of Negation at all either. Like if they were on it in this deck, same way I wouldn't fault someone for being on Flare of Denial, the new one. It's just, you know, you can't sacrifice tokens to Flare of Denial. When I first read that card, I was like, yes, and then I'm like, no, because you can't sacrifice tokens to it. So, you know, oh well. But I play enough creatures that, you know, it's possible to use it. And there's enough little interactions like, you know, Subtlety. You cast Subtlety for free, then Flare of Denial, sacking the Subtlety to counter the actual spell that the Subtlety, you know, someone goes to interact with that trigger or does something else. It's like you can do little weird things. Yeah. But it just felt a little too cute. We're not a Rogrek deck. We're not playing a whole bunch of 1 mana creatures that stick around and just add value. We're not on like Llanowar Elves type things. We're not on dorks that just hang out and then eventually get thrown away for things. So it just didn't feel right. But I wouldn't fault anyone for being on Flare Denial or Force of Negation. Right. I also wouldn't fault anyone for being on like, you know, Dispel or Spell Pierce or things like that. I just personally think those cards are not as good. I mean, for me, for my money, it's Pact to Negation, Force of Will, an Offer You Can't Refuse, Flusterstorm, Swan Song, Fierce Guardianship, Mindbreak Trap. It's those 7 really powerful counter spells. Then, if you're on a deck that can get away with doing stuff on other people's turns, which this deck kind of can't, but if you're cool with that, then Force of Negation gets a lot better. So that's that 8th one that's kind of like the staple in my other lists. I play Force of Negation every list.
I agree. And
so
if I can just add on to what you just said earlier, like the things like the Dispels and the ones that say the opponent has to pay 2 more or 3 more. I'm in the same camp where I don't think those are very good for my play style. You know what I'm saying? Like when I counter something, I want it to be countered. I don't want to have a conversation of like, well, maybe, I mean, if they tap this mana, they'll be off. No, look, when I counter your spell, it's countered. Like there's no more talking about it. It's countered. You know what I'm saying? But I know a lot of cats who love this spell, who love, what are the other kinds? It's pay 3 or pay 2. Miscast and all, or the other things. Like they love those. And I always tell people.
Mystical.
Whatever it's called, you know. Yeah, and I tell people like, look, they don't fit my play style, but the thing is though, how when I counters, I wait till the spell I need the counter comes around. I'm like, you have to just play them differently. And things like Offer You Can't Refuse, it's not you don't counter Kennen's whatever, not like this is not all counter Kennen stuff unless it's the Basalt model. It's a skill intensive card, but it works for me and my playstyle. And the same goes for Dispel and other things. You just got to know what works for you and your playstyle. And you obviously, Holden, you obviously found like the spells that work for you and your playstyle. Like that double cast of the Subtlety, that's hot, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a mana drain my own Force of Will to be able to combo off on turn 2 with my second main phase. That's hot. You know what I'm saying? Like, it really opens up a lot of interesting lines. But yeah, man, like I really love those inclusions, bro. No cap, man.
Yeah, have you ever got on a stack war and someone doesn't understand how the stack resolves after someone finally like clears it? So for example, like you cast something, I counter it in response, the other person also counters this, and we counter, and there's this huge stack. Right. And then you get to the very end of it and someone else goes to try to put a Mindbreak Trap on top of the stack and they say targeting everything. And you go, well, they've got it covered. And the other person who was originally putting the ad nause or the threat on the stack is like, damn, you had the trap the whole time. You can kind of tell, right? Like they've just kind of given up the goods that like, yep, they're fucked. You know what I do when it's my turn with priority? I tap those 2 blue mana that I've been holding on to, and I mana drain my own Force Will or my own Mindbreak Trap or my own whatever, because it's a proactive play that means I didn't just actually lose out on this tempo. Right. Now, when it comes back to my turn, I get to start the turn with 4 extra mana, 5 extra mana, 3 extra mana, whatever. And it's just, you know, Mana Drain is one of those cards that a buddy of mine, Shane, had to like literally sell me on. He was like, dude, it's so good in your deck, blah, blah, blah. We're standing outside, like right outside of the shop, and he just kept toning. And finally I was like, all right, I put that card in my deck, put High Tide in the deck. We did a bunch of testing, and it turns out Mana Drain busted, and High Tide pretty good, but I had to eventually make the cut. Right. So yeah, I mean, this interaction package, the stack interaction package is great. Anybody who knows me knows that I always have a Mindbreak Trap in my opening hand, even when I don't. And you know, it's just I'm just out here putting the fear of God, and you know, like, oh, really? Is that your third spell? Like, I just always ask people, oh, wait, how many spells is that from two?
I fucking love it, bro. I fucking love it, man. He always has it, even when you don't have it. Always have it. It's always has it, man.
Yep.
Man, so shit, like we talked about ways to stop our opponents, and we've even touched on ways how to use the same cards that we use to stop our opponents that push our own advantage. But how are we protecting our own board? Like, do we have any board protection pieces? Of course, we got the One Ring that gives us protection, but what are other cards we running like that, bro?
We're not.
Oh.
It's essentially the answer, right? The card quality of any one individual card in the deck is not that good. Okay. And that's a good thing. It's as weird as that sounds, it's kind of like when you go up against Delver in Legacy. What are you going to do? Counter the Dragon's Rage Channeler? Counter the Delver? Yeah, I guess you counter the Murktide region if you can. But you know what they're going to do? They're just going to play another one. No one card is the thing that just wins the game. And again, this comes back to what we really first kind of touched on when I was trying to explain like how it's so hard to explain why this deck is good. This is, I guess, is one of the really big reasons. There's no one Achilles heel to this deck outside, like I talked about maybe like a Dranith sort of effect. There's no one card that's like, oh, you're fucked. I just countered your breach. I break trap your breach. You're fucked. It's like, nah. I'm just gonna cast another cantrip. I'm just gonna cast another clone. I'm just gonna, you know, and that's, to me, that is a huge plus for the deck. I guess if you kind of want to think about it this way, there's that hydrostatic shenanigans, the new MDFC that.
Because I was gonna ask about, like, do you ever feel like you need something like a spell scatter or something to ever protect your commander? But with that mentality of it, like, kill my commander, it costs 3 mana, I'll recast it next turn for 5, or you know, that mana drain, that extra colorless mana, oh, that's fine. I'm just gonna go to my next like, oh, you stopped me this main phase, I'm gonna go to my second main phase, and let's keep the chain going, let's keep the lines going, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, I definitely hear you there, brother.
Second verse, same as the first. You know, I'm just gonna put the Geralf on the stack. What are you gonna do? You're gonna use your interaction on me? You know, Rog's up next, right? And those are the conversations I have with people. I'm just like, this card does not win the game. And in fact, there is not even a Thassa's Oracle in the deck. There's not, more so than that, there isn't a single card in the entire deck that says I win the game or anything similar to I win the game. Not even close. You know, what's the worst I'm going to do? Mill all you out manually with an Altar of Dementia? That takes a while, and it's very telegraphed, and you'll see it coming. You'll have plenty of time to interact. Don't worry. You know, and that's the conversations I need to have with people, and it is a skill-intensive way of looking at it, because I need to be clear about what I'm going to do and what I'm not. It's like when a Magda player goes and makes their first treasure, and someone who doesn't understand how Magda works, and they just go, kill the Magda. Like, well, I guess, but or you could hold up that unsubstantiate or sick and stupid or whatever for when the very next player in turn order tries to put a breach on the stack or an intuition on the stack or whatever. Yeah. So you know, that, and if I can add on to that, within people's politicking, they have to realize, and this is something that I do a lot of my politicking, like, understand that there's a time to wait for the last one if possible. Like, for example, with Magda, before they go in to make their 5th treasure in combat, the beginning of combat, that's when you pop the Magda. You know what I'm saying? Let's not even let that 5th treasure come into the picture. But on the flip side, like, I find that you have to be very selective with when you listen to the person and say, like, I'm not doing anything. I'm like, okay, dude, you're not doing anything right now, but you have to understand what your deck is able to do and what their deck is able to do. And this is, it's hard to do, for example, for this Dune bucket, because you may not know what it does, but understand that, like, hey, if I'm playing my mono red Rionia, all I can do is spot removal. So I can sit here, I can't stop you once you're 20 cards down the storm. I'm going to proactively remove this, because that's what a mono red deck can do. We can spot remove. And so I have to be aggressive in my colors. I had to have this conversation in one of the tournaments I did in the past against, what is that Abzan commander that does all the Graveyard shenanigans? The Necrobloom? Not the Necro. It's an old one. What is it? Yep. Rog is Golgari. That's Golgari. It's pay 3, mill some, put something onto the battlefield. What is that commander? Oh, Tyam. Yeah, Tyam. I had to have a whole discussion with a Tyam, because I was playing. This was when I was back in my Rionia days in the tournament. Seeing it was just, he was just like, bro, why did you keep killing my commander? Like TNK and I'm winning. I was like, bro, because
I don't have any graveyard in my deck. I don't play Gravedigger's Cage because it's a non-bow with my power heroes and all these other things that could stop you. So instead of letting you do your thing, which you may be convenient for you, I have to be proactive and in removing your commander, because that's what my commander does. Because I know for me that I can't stop what you do once it gets inevitable. And at the end of the day, when I had to choose between interacting, it was like either a Tivit or a TNK or a time, I said I'm more afraid of what the time's going to do in a turn or two, because it's inevitable with you all, versus the TNK is always going to be the same level of threat level, and my spot rule is not going to stop them. Killing their Tymna, they'll play a Ristic Study. Kill the Crom, they'll play a Fish. Or kill a Crom, they'll play a Tymna. Kill a Tymna, they'll play a Crom. Like, they're going to draw cards no matter what. You know, realize what your deck can do and what the other person's deck, and people never know what's in your hand. So when people question you, be like, well, why are you doing that? I'm like, bruh, you don't know the cards in my hand. So I'm popping their thing, but I'm popping your thing. You don't know what I'm going to be doing with the thing. Or I'm popping their thing. You don't know what I'm going to be doing later with your thing. So always listen to people, but always realize they don't know what's in your hand. So I just wanted to throw that out as like just a thing. People got to think a little bit in addition when it comes to their politics, and just blindly listening to people and just like, well, yeah, they're not winning the game. Yeah. I'm like, they're not winning the game right now, but can you stop them 3 spells later? No. So then you want to counter what they're doing right now. Stop the being aggressive. Like if I'm playing my very last point, if I'm playing my Marty's control list, I am the cat that will mana drain your dock side. And they're like, why would you do that? Why don't you just wait for this? Because you're about to make a dock side for 10. And then there'll be 3 spells in your hand that can win you the game. If I don't stop the dock side, what's the point? I'm going to delay your mana drain your dock side. And so that's me realizing that I'm playing a control list, and it's better for me to be oppressive in my control than let people just run off. But if I'm playing my turbo mid-range list, cast your spells. I'm not a control list. Go Mary. I'm going to just hold this Force of Negation till you put the Breach on the stack. Then we can have the fight then. You know what I'm saying? So realizing when you want to interact, because being aggressive with control means you have to you can counter fewer spells. Because if I mana drain your dock side, I don't have to use a Force or a Force of Will and your Force of Negation. If I was trying to mana drain your Underworld Breach, if I mana drain your dock side, it's like, you know what? Let me just stop here. Like, I'm already kind of blown out. Let me stop and try again next turn. Versus if I waited, now I have to commit 2 to 3, 4 counter spells on just your thing. And when the next turn person tries to put for a win, I don't have those counter spells against them anymore. So just
then you're out.
Then I'm out. So every deck is different. It's not cookie cutter. You got to know your play style. You got to know your deck. But please continue to go. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on for the stack interaction or anything? Or we were even talking about protection, like how you don't even need protection at that point. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I'm not on stack species. I'm not on board based protection. You know. It's just I thought about it a lot. Like we talked about before, this deck actually I can't really play Torpor because unfortunately the way Geralf works is that when a zombie enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +++ counter. So it like kind of is a combo with certain things. But I actually can play Gravedigger's Cage, Weathered Runestone, and Cursed Totem pretty easily, pretty proficiently actually. And so that's why those are in the sideboard, and that's why I keep thinking about it, and that's why, you know, it just kind of that's basically, this is one of the things that I could really use more data on and more playtesting on. And one of the things we don't have in our local meta is someone who is consistently playing cEDH. There's someone who has the deck and plays it. There's actually a couple people, but they've been on some other lists recently, so I haven't had a lot of reps against it. And I think cEDH would make a really good argument for the Gravedigger's Cage, Weathered Runestone, Cursed Totem sort of effects.
100%.
So, you know, right now I'm not on Stax effects like that, and I'm not on Spellskite or ways to onboard, shoes, all the different shoes that they have that you can put on your commander to stop it from being targeted. You know, make it proud or hexproof or whatever. I'm not on that stuff either, but it's mostly just because I'm just not a big threat. Like, until I'm in the process of already going 90 miles an hour, I'm going 10. Like, 100%. The deck feels like, when people are playing against me, it feels like I'm dirtling around, not doing much, countering people's stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, and now it's too late. Like, it just kind of happens at the turn of a corner, you know? So
yeah, I definitely hear you there. And please, that is one of some of the scariest decks, because it's just like, it is tough to have to interact with the person when they're not doing anything, because if you don't, unless you really know their list, you don't know if you're just wasting a counter spell. And when the next person in turn order loot ends up winning the game and that counter spell was wasted, it's kind of like the argument, like, I told you I wasn't doing anything. And so it's always tough to make those decisions. But speaking just purely on the list, since we're not stacking people out and we're not even trying to protect our board, that means we are trying to push the advantage and go faster. So talk to me about your ramp package, brother.
Yeah, this is what I love, okay? This is one of the things that I've spent the most time and energy really thinking about. It's one of the ways that really, I think, pushes this list in a way that is extremely creative that a lot of people wouldn't think about. I think in here it's called like mana advantage or fast mana or something like that. Yeah, there it is, fast mana rock. So, okay, let's start off with the obvious ones. We got Chrome Mox, yep, that works. Jeweled Lotus, yep, this is perfect for our Commander. We can literally just cast our Commander 100% off the Jeweled Lotus. Lotus Petal, yep, it's just another free way to make mana. Mana Crypt, of course. Mana Vault, of course, which, you know, those are just staples. They're busted magic cards. Soul Ring, busted magic card. So these are all kind of the generic ones, right? Now we get into the ones that are a little bit trickier. Here's where we have Mox Opal, Mox Diamond, Mox Amber. These, to me, are the sorts of rocks that when people are brewing decks, they assume you should just play. And I am a really, really big proponent of spending some time and scrutinizing those cards and asking yourself the really hard-hitting question of, what happens when I don't meet this condition? What can I do with this card? Okay, Mox Amber is a great example. What happens when I don't have a legendary in play? I can't use Mox Amber on turn 1 to play my commander, because my commander is the legendary. And if I'm not on small red pointy goblin guy,
Dockside?
No, the 0 mana one that's in Rog side.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm not on Rog, then I can't guarantee a Mox Amber. So this is something that you have to ask yourself that question for.
Right.
Mox Diamond. If I don't have a consistent way to really know that, yeah, I'm gonna have lands, or if I don't want to do land recursion stuff out of the yard that makes it really powerful, should I be on Mox Amber or Mox Diamond? Mox Opal, if I'm not going to be on enough artifacts to really turn it on all the time, then, you know, should I really be on Mox Opal? Like, if my commander is not an artifact or a way to produce an artifact.
Right.
And what I will say that makes this list different about answering those questions than other lists is, who gives a shit? I'm gonna mana drain it. You know, it's like that sort of mentality where it's just like, not mana drain, offer it. Like, I'm going to offer, you can't refuse it. Or I'm going to force of will my own Mox Diamond, even though I don't have a land in hand, and then I'm going to mana drain the force of will. Like, these are just ways for me to spin my wheels and cast spells when they're at their absolute fail case. Now, obviously, they're just good when they're good. Like, when I have a couple other rocks in play, they're good. When I have an extra land in hand, cool, Mox Diamond's good. In this deck, I'm trying to turbo out my commander. Well, then almost always Mox Amber makes a blue. So these are all good cards, but it's really important to, at least in my opinion, to ask yourself the question of, what happens when these cards fail, when I don't meet the condition? And in this deck, even if they fail, they still turn into zombies. So 100%. That's good enough, right?
Yeah, that makes 100% sense. Yeah, another question, like, I love your talk on the fail case. Like, question on energy tap, if you are not familiar with this one, it says target untapped creature you control becomes tapped, and an amount of colorless mana equal to the target creature the casting cost to oh my gosh, I butchered that. Add an amount of colorless mana equal to target creature's casting cost to your mana pool. So this can't...
Dude, that's not your fault. That card's from Legends, dude. Impossible to understand those fucking cards from back in the day.
Man, so I really need to understand this one. Are we just looking to get the 3 mana off our commander to keep storming off, or because we can't do
that's the floor.
That's the floor? Okay.
Yeah, you found it. I mean, there's no secret to this card, but the one really powerful thing about this card that I love is because we're on so many clones. You know what's really sweet? When you clone somebody's Seedborn Muse, you clone their Consecrated Sphinx, you clone their or whatever, and then you just say 1 blue mana makes 7 or whatever. You know,
okay.
Now we're on the same page.
Okay. All right, that makes
sense.
Yeah,
and we also do play a bunch of 4 mana cards, creatures. Like, we're on Danny Pink, cEDH All-Star Danny Pink. We're on Danny Pink. We're on Phyrexian Metamorph, which can just be another like 4 or 5 mana creature that's on the board.
Right.
We're on Spark Double. We're on Sakashima. We're on all these other 4 mana ones. So this card is almost always 1 blue mana, 1 storm, make 3 colorless, 4 colorless, or sometimes 5 colorless. And that's such a good card in this deck. If that's what this card read, that card is really good in this deck.
Okay, cool. That makes sense to me. Yeah, keep going on rant packs, brother. Keep talking.
Cool. So like we talked about before, an offer you can't refuse. Obviously, you target your own stuff. I basically try to offer all my own stuff. Chain of Vapor and an offer you can't refuse are the same card. They read, play this card in a weird way that nobody was really expecting, and now just make a bunch of mana. So those cards are awesome in this deck. And yeah, they require you to give up some stuff, right? You have to cast a spell and let it get countered to your own spell. But whatever, you get to storm off in the process and make some treasures. That's really powerful. Chain of Vapor, same thing. You target all your own rocks and bounce them all back to your hand, and then replay them all. So it's like storm 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever, if you start to get into like a really good situation. And all it requires you to do is to sacrifice some lands. Who cares, right? Especially because we're on Surveyor Scope. So Surveyor Scope, the last card in that list, is 2 generic mana for an artifact. And this is, a Tameshi All-Star, if you know anything about Tameshi. This is tap, exile it, search your library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the number of players who control at least 2 more lands than you. You put those cards on the battlefield and you shuffle. And notably, they don't come to play tap. So this card, you can, let's say your opponents have, you're the last person in seed order, you're player 4. Everybody plays a land, it goes to you, you play an Ancient Tomb and a Surveyor Scope. Everybody plays a land, and you get to go Chain of Vapor, targeting your own mana rocks, like you play at Island. Chain of Vapor, targeting your own mana rocks, crack your own lands to the Chain of Vapor to copy it, and then crack the Surveyor Scope. And you can even crack the Surveyor Scope in between the copies of Chain of Vapor if you need more bounces. Like if you need more lands to sack to the Chain of Vapor.
That's hot.
All the while floating the mana. It's so hot. It's so hot. The card is so sick. Obviously, it's not as good as it is in Tameshi. I mean, in Tameshi, it's broken because Tameshi uses the lands for advantage. But here, we need lands too. And the big reason why we need lands is because I refuse to play them and I hate them. So we need to try to find them through other non-traditional sources. And all the deck's trying to do is spin its wheels. And so if that's the case, it's good for me to be casting spells that turn into lands rather than just playing lands, if that makes sense. Understand. So Chain of Vapor goes great with Surveyor Scope. Also, obviously, we've talked about before, it goes great with Daze, it goes great with Gush. You bounce islands back to your hand, and now your Surveyor Scope is good. And we're on every fetch we can play. So what's really sick is when you purposely hold up like 2 fetches and you don't crack one the previous turn, and then you crack both of them in response to them being cracked, you don't have lands in play. Now you Surveyor Scope again, and you get 3 lands, and then the 2 fetches come down. Now you have 5 lands. It's just like, what the fuck just happened? Mono Blue just ramped.
Not Holden's holding priority. I cut you off, brother. My bad, man. But that's ridiculous. I fetch a land, hold priority, fetch a land, hold priority, crack Surveyor Scope. Get the fuck out of here.
Dude, there's a reason. I'm telling you, man. There's a reason why they call me Holden Prior. It's like, to me, those are the most fun things to do in Magic. I want to play Solitaire in a way that's super spicy and fun that makes other people at the table smile and be like, oh shit, never thought about that.
Yeah.
So Repeal does a similar thing to Repeal does a similar thing to Chain of Vapor. You bounce your own thing, you draw cards, cantrip. We talked about this, and it allows you to then go up mana when you're targeting a Mana Bolt, a Soul Ring, or a Mana Crypt. So that's also a really powerful card. Springleaf Drum is great because it's essentially just free. Like you pay 1 to play it, and you get to convert it into blue mana. And it's also really good, like we talked about with Subtlety. And also I just have a fuck ton of tokens on board, so I can always just tap a token, right? That's kind of the floor. But it's great with Subtlety too, because it's 0 mana. If it's already been in play the previous turn, it's 0 mana spell cast for Subtlety and big a mana. It's pretty sick. And then Mana Drain, we've already talked about how you can make mana with that, and Surveyor Scope we've already talked about. So let's talk about the 2 reducers in the deck. I wasn't on Helm of Waking forever. I was only on Sapphire Battalion for the longest time, and I just found that when I have Sapphire Battalion in play, the game just popped off. Like it's very hard to stop me once I'm reducing my spell cost, because that's one of the biggest gates in the deck is mana costs. And because we're not playing red or green, we don't have a lot of ways to make treasures or dorks or whatever. Right. So Sapphire Battalion is really powerful, and I was like, oh man, I wish I could play another Sapphire Battalion. oh wait, I can. It's called Helm of Awakening, and it
Yes.
also reduces all my rocks. It combos really, really hard with Displacer Kitten. It does all these busted things with other cards that I have in the deck, reducing their cost and then allowing
Yes.
them to like come into play for more mana and all this other stuff. It goes great with you know, 3 Steps Ahead and Phyrexian Metamorph, all these other cards that we want to reduce costs of anyways. So that's an awesome card. And then the last one, this is the spice, Hidden Strings.
Hey.
Hidden Strings. Ooh, God, I love Hidden Strings. I'll tell you right now, I've been playing Hidden Strings. Legitimately, I've been playing Hidden Strings in the weirdest, most broken ways since the moment I discovered this card. Cypher, the mechanic, is so sick. And when I saw they brought it back with that Arcane Heist card in OTJ, like the Commander OTJ or whatever,
Yeah.
I was just like, that's awesome. You know, I wish I could play more Cypher cards. All the mono blue ones are bad, except for this giant 6-mana one that makes copies. That is just too much mana.
Yeah.
But all the other ones are like, paint the color of blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know, cool. Well, I'm not Orvar, so I can't justify just having a 1-mana truly do nothing Storm 2, even though I thought about it. Hidden Strings, though, on the other hand, says Storm 1, right? You cast a spell, then you untap the lands you just tapped to play it, right? So it's free, it's 100% free. Then you connect with your commander, and then it puts another copy on the stack, and it does this every turn forever for as long as you connect.
Yeah.
And you untap 2 more lands. So you can float mana in combat to cast instants, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. And then I had this huge aha moment. How does Roaming Throne work with Cypher? I went down a bit of a wormhole here. And when I came out the other side, I realized that I was completely cleansed of my earthly possessions, and all I needed to do was Roaming Throne with Hidden Strings for the rest of eternity. It's just so busted. It double triggers your Cypher, so you get 2 copies of Hidden Strings on the stack. It's just so good. Like, so anyways, another synergistic card that makes you mana, that casts a bunch of spells, and sometimes you can just use it in other weird ways where you like untap your One Ring and that kind of stuff. Like, obviously those are good, but the floor is really just 2 spell casts a turn, make a bunch of mana, and it's free. So great card.
Fucking love it, bro. Man, such an awesome ramp package. This is like, everything is so intentional. Everything is double layer, triple layer, and everything just solves the problems, which is how do we get the mana to storm off in this mono blue shell. But no matter what,
And
oh, go ahead, brother. Yeah.
Well, the other thing I was gonna say is just like, there's other cards too that make you go up mana, but they're not. I didn't even put them in the ramp package because they're like only sometimes. So like Snap, any of the things that untap lands, Snap, Frantic Surge, and then also this deck is an ISO Rev deck.
Right.
For obvious reasons, right? You just cast infinite spells, you make infinite dudes. So Dramatic Reversal as a floor is also just untap your mana ramps and make more mana. So it's just one more kind of little mana ramp. So that little package right there, you're looking at this Dramatic Reversal and ISO Scepter, and then also right above it, Frantic Search and Snap. Those are also cards that on their floor are just mana ramp.
Oh, cool. I like to hear that. So, but with that being said, though, we gotta take it back to the roots of everything. All the fast mana is hot. All the untaps and the taps, all that's fire. But we gotta go to the land base, the root of all mana for Magic the Gathering. How Richard Garfield intended it. So, talk to me. Do we have any notable land base inclusions in our small but intentional 24 land package?
Yeah, I'm for sure playing Magic the way Richard Garfield intended it. Yeah, we got Richard Garfield's out there, like, gets heart palpitations when I register my Moxfield deck for tournaments. But yeah, this Ancient Tomb, City of Traders, the main vein,
all the soul lands.
Yeah, the soul lands, right? Like, they just help me ramp into my early commander. Obviously, we're on Gemstone. This is also really important to note that this deck doesn't need to be on fetches, and there was a small world where I was playing a Stax version of this deck, and I was on the card Mind Lock Orb. It's a 4-mana blue artifact that says players can't search libraries. And it's because my tutor package was so small to begin with. As we saw before, I'm only on 3 tutors, 4 if you count Urza Saga. So because I can be on Mind Lock Orb, should I? Right? And I playtested it a bunch, and I just kind of found that, it was okay. It wasn't... It was too much mana. There's a reason why we don't see Stranglehold, which is just a better version of this card, red.
Right.
It is an artifact, though, so you could do some spicy stuff where you could I mean, it's kind of counterintuitive, but transmute artifact into a mind lock orb and then all of a sudden lock everybody out of the game, like stuff like that.
Right.
But
Right.
anyways, so we're on fetches for a reason though, right? We want to fill up our yard. I'm doing all the cantrip cartel stuff and I'm putting all the fetches in the yard because as we know, I'm just playing 60 card internal formats. I'm just on
100%.
Legacy Delver. So now we got to fill up our yard. That way we can use it for the temporal trespass and the treasure cruise. So that's the main reason. I'm on a bunch of basics, and also in that version that was on Mind Lock Orb and all the Stax pieces, I was on back to basics. And that's one part about this deck that I keep leaning into is maybe I should be on back to basics. It's just that card feels really bad in a meta that is really relying on dockside, because who cares?
Right.
It's like, who cares? Like, yeah, I didn't untap. All I got to do is just make a land drop, cast a dockside, win the game.
Or just fucking play rocks and win the game of rocks when you can go to Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation. Not having access to your lands or your non-basics suck until you just the game is going to go long. If you can't turn the corner in the game fast enough, your opponents will just eventually just say, okay, fine, I'm just going to go Thassa's Consultation with my 3 rocks on board.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not. It doesn't make it bad. It just you got to be able to turn that corner quicker. So yeah.
Yeah, and I found the same thing. I just found it was like, well, this isn't really what the deck's trying to do, although it's really good. Like, it's like, when you talk about it out loud, it sounds good, but then when you play it in practice, it's just, again, it leans too far, stretching the deck in a different direction, which I'm trying not to do. I'm trying to stay synergistic, and I want my opening hands to just be good, and I want no single card in my deck to be a blowout if it gets countered. It kind of leans into all these things that we talked about. So the last thing I'll just mention is, Otawar we talked about for removal, Seagate Restoration, Sink into Stupor, and Hydroelectric Specimen are just not lands, they're spells, which means sometimes you just cast them for more storm, which is really good. Seagate Restoration is one of the few cards in this deck that is an absolutely bonkers hit off of Mind's Desire. We are a Mind's Desire deck, as weird as that sounds. We are a 6 mana giant haymaker. It's the ad nauseum of this deck, except for it's uncounterable because it has storm. So it's cool, yeah, go for it. Unless you have literally exactly Mindbreak Trap or Flusterstorm, sure, counter the original one. I don't give a fuck. I'm getting the rest of the storm copies. Right. And Seagate Restoration is sick because it's a land that is almost always a land, but on that 1 or 2% of the time when it's not, and we hit it off of Mind's Desire, it feels so good. So, yeah.
I fuck with that, bro. I fuck with it, man. Such a very, very, like I said, it's uncomfortable for me, but I feel like this leans and it's such strong because your play style, you're all in on a mono blue deck and it's so powerful. And I really love how you found the number of lands that is needed to make your deck work. And I'm be honest, like I'm so glad that you're playing all 3 MDFCs that come in untapped. I just feel like you're tweaking if you're not in mono color. I don't know what to say. Just they're good. They're fucking good, guys. Just play them. Let's see. I mean, at this point, the only question I have left is, are there any notable categories that we haven't been able to talk about? Like, you pretty much just then talked about the payoffs category. Is there anything else? I'm guessing, we do have one recursion card that we haven't got to talk about.
Yeah,
the founding of the third
there's
path.
kind of I'll make it super quick because I know this went long. But so founding the third path, this is just, if you've never seen this card, this card is way better than I thought it was. You have to reread it like 6 times to realize how good it is. Okay. Essentially, this is just 2 mana, and it has read ahead though. It's not just a normal saga, which means when it comes into play, you get to choose which chapter it comes into play on. So this comes into play, and you always choose chapter 1 or chapter 3. So chapter 1 is literally just a double spell cast. It says, founding of the third play comes into play, and then you may cast an instant sorcery spell with mana value 1 or 2 from your hand without paying its mana cost. So it's basically just a way to like cheat on mana to get 2 spell casts, which sometimes is all you need. And then eventually, a couple turns later, it'll hit the 3rd chapter, and in between, you can mill your opponent or yourself. But the third chapter is so nuts. It says exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard, copy it, you may cast the copy. So it's being able to play Snapcaster or mission briefing, I guess, like one of those kinds of effects, except it has the versatility of when you don't already have good cards in the yard to just be an early turn 1 or turn 2 double spell cast to make a couple extra zombies by just going chapter 1, and then by the time you come around to chapter 3 a turn or 2 later, it's just like inevitability. It's like a Snapcaster that's just sitting on board waiting to get cracked. It's like Seal of Snapcaster is the best way to think of it. It's a great card.
I love that. I love that. I love how you talked about that as well. It makes 100% sense. I have no pushback to say about it, honestly. Man, well, like I said, go ahead.
I was just going to mention the big kind of elephant in the room that we didn't talk about is a section of the deck that's called combo engines. And essentially why this is so important is because there are a couple cards that no one has ever read in their life. There's, if you don't mind if we mention them.
No, go ahead, bro. Go ahead. I'm right here with you. I'm at it.
Cool. So there's 3 cards that do basically the same thing. There's Shrieking Drake, cEDH's Faithful, and Dreamstalker. Each one of these cards say, cast this spell. When it comes into play, bounce any card of the type that's on the card, like bounce a creature or bounce a permanent, but you can target itself. So for Shrieking Drake just says 1 blue mana. However many blue mana you have, cast that many spells per turn, because you just keep casting the Shrieking Drake, keep bouncing it back to its hand. Now, imagine if you have an Ashnod's Altar in play, or an Altered Dimension in play, or a Phyrexian Altar, which is the best one. If you have a Phyrexian Altar in play, and you have a Shrieking Drake in hand, and you have any 1 blue open mana with Geralf, unless somebody else out there has a way to counter this, this says make an infinite power dude and have infinite storm. Because you cast it, you make a dude, it comes into play with a 1/1 counter. Then you bounce the Shrieking Drake back to hand, then you eat that dude to Phyrexian Altar for 1 blue, and you do it again, you do it again, you do it again. And the whole time the zombie's getting bigger, 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 bigger. And before you know it, you have a 1 million zombie. And that's like the floor of this card. That's the floor. That's the crazy part. It combos with everything. Everything in the deck combos with Shrieking Drake. If I hate to even say this out loud because I don't want people to have fuel on how to beat me, but if I put a Shrieking Drake on the stack and there is any outlet on the board, you should counter it, and you should counter it in a way that is permanently countered.
Yeah.
cEDH's Faithful does essentially the same thing, except for it has exploit. And so when it comes into play, you may sacrifice a creature, including itself if you wanted to, which we don't normally do. But you could sacrifice a creature. Hey, how about the zombie that you just got off the cast trigger for casting this spell? So before it even comes into play, the zombie's already in play. When it comes into play, sees the zombie, you sack the zombie, and then you can return target creature from your hand. So you return the cEDH's Faithful to your hand. This goes infinite storm. It results in an infinite dude at the end, except for you're not making mana if you have a Phyrexian Altar in play. So this one is a little harder to go off. It's like budget Shrieking Drake. Although it does do a super spicy thing with Skull Clamp. So if in between each one of these, you're attaching a Skull Clamp to creatures, you're just stacking those creatures to draw cards. So it's another reason why Skull Clamp's really good. And then Dreamstalker is the last one that does essentially the same thing, except for it costs 2 mana, which again, we could reduce with Helm of Awakening and we could reduce with Sapphire Medallion. And this thing says when it comes into play, return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. So technically, this could also be mana ramp. This thing could come into play, especially if you get a cost reducer, and just bounce an Ancient Doom back to your hand, and then replay the Ancient Doom and go up mana. Like, it's kind of bonkers. That's the floor. The ceiling on this card is, it's just another Shrieking Drake. It just bounces itself over and over and over and over and over and over again. And then the end of the loop, it bounces the last creature that your opponent had on board that they were using as a blocker, and then you swing in with your million zombie or whatever, right?
I like that.
These cards are so good. These are the like secret tech of the deck, essentially.
I love this. Keep
Jason,
going. Keep going. Yeah. Absolutely love it. So I know it took some creativity and some thought to get there. And like seeing these in the list and seeing the application really makes me feel like, okay, Faded, so you know the amount the Rionia community brews and how much we put into the Rionia deck when it came to like even the combo lines I created where you can win the game with Imperial Recruiter, fucking Lightning Runner, and what was that Ember Shield Breaker? I remember I was the first one to bring that to the Rionia community. People look at me like, what the fuck are you playing with, bro? Like
that's spicy.
You know what I'm saying? And just it's like, bro, understanding like lean to the strength of your deck, and they're bad cards, but they're great in your list, and they're just fucking amazing. But yeah, gotta keep going.
Exactly, bad cards. These are actually not just bad cards; these are terrible cards. Like, and there's a reason why they look so ugly. You know, it's like they're just that bad. But yeah. Anyways, Jason Bourne. Jesus Christ, it's Jason Bourne. Jason Bright, Glowing Prophet. That is a new card from the Fallout set. That card's so weird. And when I read it, I was just like, wait a second, are you thinking what I'm thinking? And then the zombie looked at me and he was like, ah. So basically what it does is, imagine you already have Geralf in play. You cast it. So it's the first cast for turn. It comes into play. It's also the first zombie for turn, which means any other spell you cast, it now kind of like shortcuts the number of zombies that you played per turn. It kind of just pumps it by 1. So that's just kind of a little synergy. But it's a 2/3, and it says whenever a zombie or mutant you control dies, and this deck really care about the zombies, if its power was different from its base power, I don't know, maybe with like +1/+1 counters on it, draw a card. So now all of my altars now say draw a card.
Wow.
It's crazy. It also has a second ability that says pay 2 generic, which, by the way, in case you didn't remember, is how much Ashnod's altar gives you. Pay 2, sacrifice a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature control against flying until end of turn.
Wow.
So you can do a bunch of other cool stuff where you can, like, the zombies that were sitting around from early turns that didn't have counters on them, like the first ones that you made off Storm, you could
literally
put
printed
those counters on.
They literally printed this card for your commander. Or this card.
They really did.
No. This commander was printed for this card, because I guess this one, chicken or the hell egg conversation, whatever not. But that's fucking ridiculous.
Oh yeah, that's true. This came out after. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it is.
It's
Jason
perfect.
Bourne is so good, so good.
Oh yeah.
It's a 99-cent card or 50-cent card or whatever. It's just like, it's so awesome.
Wow.
And then Danny Pink is also just an objectively broken card in this deck. This is a 4-mana human, which means when we put Rumbling Throne on human, it also double triggers, which is super important because that means you draw 2 cards. And it says creatures you control, which, as we know from Nadu, is broken. Creatures you control have, quote, whenever 1 or more counters are put on this creature for the first time each turn, draw a card. So now this says every spell you cast, draw a card. Because the zombie comes into play with a +1/+1 counter, which is the first time it's been put on for the turn, draw a card. So bonkers. It also has Mentor, which is kind of flavored text, which just means when you attack with it, if there's a smaller creature, you pump it with a +1/+1 counter, which then draws you a card or whatever. Cool. But the main thing is that this is like a static piece that sits on board that just means every spell you cast, you just draw a card.
Yeah.
So now all of these cards we're explaining now, this is starting to kind of unlock the aha moment of why are these cantrips even playable? Because previously it was like, yeah, you're storming, you're making zombies or whatever, but how do you keep going? Like, how does this fuel what you're doing?
Yes.
Well, here you go. These cards mean as you keep casting spells, you keep drawing cards. Obviously, Displace Your Kitten, if it's not clear why this is good, you haven't ever played cEDH. But in case you're trying to understand, it's like you keep casting spells, you're flickering your rocks, you're making more mana, or you're flickering your clone effects, cloning more things. You know, it's just really, really good, obviously. And because we play so many clones, you know it's really better than the Displace Your Kitten? 2, 3, 4, 5 Displace Your Kittens. So yeah, that's a quick way to a win. And then the really, really kind of newer include that I wasn't really sure if I should play or not, and once I did, I was like, what was I doing before? Defiler of Dreams. The Defiler cycle is just you turn all of your color of that permanent, as long as they're permanent spells, into one of their mana pips having Phyrexian mana instead. So as an additional cost to cast a blue permanent spell, you may pay 2 life. Those spells cost 1 blue less to cast if you paid life this way. This effect reduces only the amount of blue mana you pay. And then it has a second ability. I don't know, whenever you cast a blue permanent spell, draw a card. So now imagine Shrieking Drake. You know the card that we already said was completely broken? That only costs a singular blue pip? It now costs no mana and 2 life only, and every time you cast it, it's a cast, not an ETB. Every time you cast it, you draw a card. So you cast it, draw a card, make a zombie, hits the battlefield, bounces back to your hand, and you do it all over again. So all of these cards, if you ever get more than one of them in play, it's over. Like if you get more than one of these engines in play, like you're not, no one's stopping that, you know. Really, really busted Magic card.
Dude, man, and I'm really glad. First of all, I love the synergy right there. It makes the bounce effect seem that much better, and not seem, but it makes them that much better with the Defiler of Dreams and Jason Bright and Danny Pink. Because actually one of the questions I was going to ask you is, like, of course you're playing Rhystic Study and you're playing the Mystic Remore and the One Ring is like main draw engines. Those are common. But I was going to ask about alternate card draw engines, because even though you're not trying to be a tribal deck, your commander is passively giving you consistent zombies to your battlefield. So I was going to ask about cards like Distant Melody or Kindred Discovery, if those were worth the inclusion, but it seems like you're playing them, but in different, like in like the newer versions of them. Like if you all are not familiar with Distant Melody, what that one says is
it's in the considering. All those cards are in the considering pile because I did test them, but yeah,
like these are just great usual things we see more in casual, but when you're making 20 zombies, it may be worth to say, okay, I just fizzled out, but I drew a Distant Melody, so let me draw 20. Or on the flip side with the Kindred Discovery, it's a similar thing to what this honestly, I like your inclusion with this Defiler of the Dreams more than this. But dude, what Kindred Discovery says, when he enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. He would choose zombie. Whenever a creature you control, a chosen type, enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card. And so what I love about even more with the Defiler Dreams, because it does double duty, it's not just a card draw engine, it's also the thing that allows you to storm off with the deck is already trying to do. And so for me, like, you've answered my question tenfold, and it makes me so happy to see the layers upon layers upon layers of utility for each of these cards. By far, I love this, bro.
Yeah, it was really hard not to lean even harder into the zombie tribal aspect. There's some very strange cards that do really interesting things with zombies. There's the old Geralf, actually, Geralf Visionary Stitcher, that just says zombies you control are flying, and then you can like sack a non-token creature and make a zombie or whatever. There's Larder Zombie, which is a 1 blue 1/3 defender zombie that has tap 3 untapped creatures you control. Look at the top card of your library, you may put it in your graveyard, essentially surveil one. There's Adaptive Automaton and the other tribal artifact creature, Metallic Mimic. Those ones that like when you cast or when you have other creatures of the chosen type come into play, they become bigger or whatever. So there's all those effects. And then there's also just really broken cards like you were talking about, like Kindred Discovery. And then not to mention Intruder Alarm and Faces of the Past, like things that say when creatures enter the battlefield, do a thing. And I'm telling you, I played them all. Currently I have 5 versions of this deck that I'm actively keeping up to date, and all 5 of them have different win cons in them. There's one that's a Poison Storm version that just plays Prologue to Phyresis and pops off with poison and proliferation and Flux Channeler and that new Dreamtide Whale and cards that say when you do a thing, proliferate. Because what's busted about my zombies is they have counters on them, so you can proliferate them bigger as the fail case in the new Rad Storm and all that stuff, right? But I just found that version of the deck wasn't quite good enough. I have an Intruder Alarm version of the deck that does weird combo shenanigans and untapping and whatever. I have all these different versions of this deck that I've brewed and played and really play tested and spent a lot of time doing. And what I keep coming back to is the old adage of you could try to play less bad cards. And this deck plays a lot of bad cards to begin with, so the fact that this is where I'm at really tells you that like we're out here playing weird stuff and it's working. Like it's odd, but it's working. So
and that's at the end of the day, that's why I tell every time I'm talking with one of my patrons or just talking to somebody in the TC community of just like, yo, like I'm not here to tell you what's good or bad, bro. I just want to, if it's working for you, it's working for you. All I want to do is understand why it's working for you, to make me better, to make the community better, and then let me add on to what you're saying. So for me, as long as I hear the line, it feels good and it's working, I'm good with that. At that point, I'm like, shit, let's see some playtest hands. And I'm gonna say that to you right now. Let's see some playtest hands. Like, let me get into Holden's head and just like kind of see what he thinks about when he's looking at these opening 7. And so with that said, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
You ready, brother? All right, so first I'm gonna just go ahead and grab a D8. Let's roll it. You got a 2, so that means you're going first. Beautiful day. I'm going to deal you a fresh hand, even though this one looks pretty cool. We're not going to do this one. I'm going to deal you a fresh hand. We're going to say you're going to first, second is going Rogsai, third is going Kinnan, and fourth is TNK. Just a metapod. All right. Let's see the first 7. Okay. It is an Urza Saga, Crystal Vein, Sapphire Medallion, Seagate Restoration, Mystic Reflection, Danny Pink, and Meeting of Minds.
And you said who was the pod again? It was I'm first, and then second is Rogsai.
Is Rogsai, then Kinnan, and then Blue Farm.
Gotcha. Awesome. Okay, so we got the champions of the format. Yeah, this is interesting. This deck can do a lot of weird stuff once its Urza Saga trigger pops off. So if I am going first and the first land I play is Urza Saga, sometimes you can do a lot of busted stuff with that. The real downside to this, though, is that it really means you're not going first. You're kind of like taking a turn off to do this. And that's pretty dangerous if with a pod like this, where Roxai could just present a Necro on turn one very easily, right? They have so many ways to do that now. And if they just present a Necro and I keep a hand like this that has no way to interact whatsoever, no free interaction, and not only that, but I didn't even advance my board position, it's kind of, there's a good chance I'm not coming back from that, and possibly just losing the game on the spot. Now the upside to it, what I will say is that you do get to go turn 2, depending on what you draw, you do get to go turn 2 Sapphire Medallion without cracking your Crystal Vein, because you can play the Seagate Restoration or the Crystal Vein and tap it for colorless. And depending on the other cards that you draw, develop a slow plan that's a bit more mid-range, and then pop off really hard on turn 3. Like turn 3, you're gonna have a huge burst of mana, a huge reduction on blue spells. Meeting the Minds is free, so anytime you look at that card, you just have to remember that it costs 0. For the most part, it costs 0. And Danny Pink is one of your draw engines that we talked about. With Mystic Reflection, with Meeting the Minds and Danny Pink, you're gonna draw so many cards that with the mana reduction, there's a strong chance that you can really get there. The question though is, can you even get to turn 3? And I think no. So if it was me, I would go to second 7.
Okay, very good analysis. I agree. Yeah, second 7. We have an island, an Otawara, Urza Saga once again, Merchant Scroll, Spellseeker, Jason Bright, and Sakashima the Imposter. Seems like another turn, like it's explosive on turn 3, but yeah. What are you thinking, brother?
Yeah, the one thing I will say that, at least, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm not looking at this in the best way, but one thing that is kind of important to remember about Merchant Scroll is the way it is powerful in this deck. Merchant Scroll doesn't just get me like a generically powerful instant. It gets me, it's like a very specific tutor package where it gets me an offer you can't refuse to go up mana, or it gets me a mana drain to go up mana, or because that's what this hand is lacking, obviously, is mana, or it gets me a snap if we find a soul land, or like those kinds of things.
Right.
I think in this situation though, it's still probably too slow, and I mean with this deck, honestly, I can go to 4.
I hear
if
that.
I have to. I would probably mull.
Can I throw one thing out there? Is there ever a play pattern or a universe where you say, all right, well, I know Urza's is great on my list. I have 2 tutors. Well, granted, we're not really trying to tutor, we're more trying to draw, but I do have a draw engine, and I have one of my good clone effects as well. Is there a universe where you go turn 1 Urza's, turn 2 Island to Merchant Scroll, putting that Force of Will in hands, so you actually a turn ahead of the rock side where you be proactive about putting the Force Will? Is that a play, or is it not even worth it because you don't think you're going to even get to turn 2, knowing that you're the seat ahead of Rockside?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Force of Will is probably what I think if you keep this hand, that's what you have to do.
Okay.
But it's the thing that's tricky about it is we know exactly what Blue Farm is going to do. They're mulling for an advantage piece almost always. Like if it's not Esper, it's Mystic, it's Rhystic, it's, you know, they're going to or an early Tymna or whatever, a Crom. So like we also need to remember that like whatever I'm doing and whatever the rest of the table is doing, if I don't do it before they do, it has to be really broken.
Right.
And so that's why Merchant Scroll for Force of Will, although yeah, it saves me from losing possibly to Rog's Eye, it feeds the other 2 players more than likely.
Right.
And then my follow-up isn't just I have so much overwhelming advantage that there's nothing you're going to do about it. As weird as it might sound, like if that Spellseeker was instead like a Hidden Strings, then I would be more interested in this, because then that means I do the line you talked about, and then when we come back around to me, then I can do weird things where my Hidden Strings lets me go up a bunch of mana, because off of the Urza Saga I could get a Jeweled Lotus. So now I have like 1 floating generic mana off the Urza Saga, 2 lands in play, and that 3 mana plus the Hidden Strings now untaps the 2 lands, floating 1. So now I have 3 more mana available. So I cast the Jason Bright. The Jason Bright that gives me more dudes. And I know I'm kind of going fast through this, but
no.
This is making more Zombas. Then that whole turn kind of feels like this huge explosion, this influx. Whereas the the current Spellseeker line is just getting me another similar card to what Merchant Scroll or what Urza Saga is getting me, which is either mana, a clone effect, interaction, and none of those things are really like the engine or outlet pieces.
That makes 100% sense. Yeah, for me that makes sense. Yeah, let's go check out a 6 then. Yes, that makes sense. 6 Island, Offer, Windfall, Subtlety, Spark Double, Displacer Kitten, and Danny Pink.
We just shipped due to not having a free non-creature spell for Offer. If we had a free non-creature spell for Offer, like if that Subtlety was literally any free non-creature spell, I would literally keep this with the Island, Offer, free spell, a Windfall to refuel, and you know, drop one of the other, like the clone or the display, probably the Displacer, and then we go to our opponent's turn, and the first thing they do, we can, especially if it's like a free counter spell, we counter their thing, holding priority, and offer it, because we don't really care about countering it. We just go up mana. Or if it's a 0 mana rock, we don't pass the turn, and we just cast the rock, holding priority, offer it, and it's good enough on 6 because the engines that we have available into a Windfall are great. Like if it's good to just wheel the shit out of the table that was trying to sculpt their hand.
Exactly. Especially if you can drop. I wish there was a Bandit Crypt or something. You could just drop this off. Like, I don't give a fuck. I'm feeding the breach lines. I'm going first. So unless you got a counterspell with this Windfall, you're fucked. So yeah. So you want to see a 5?
Yeah, if we had a yeah, sure.
Okay, I cut you off. Go ahead. What were you about to say?
No, it's the same thing. If we had a crypt, yeah, we just pop off.
Oh yeah. All right. Here's a 5. Ooh, Prismatic Vista, Lotus Petal, Island, Sink into Stupor, Dramatic Reversal, Windfall, and Jason Bright.
His hand is 5. His hand is really good.
I'm
it does the things we want to do.
You said what?
Yeah. So I was just saying, it does the things we want to do, right?
Yes.
It has ways to go up mana, and I just want to take a quick note in case anybody isn't playing along at home. One more time as a reminder: 24 lands in the deck. Have you noticed that we're really not getting mana screwed? Outside of that last hand that only had 1 island with an offer, if we had any free piece there, we would have been fine.
Yeah.
Here, we've got 3 lands, a Lotus. Like, it just, I know this is recency bias too. Like, this one set of goldfishing doesn't prove what I'm getting at. But in general, I will just say that I think people are probably playing too many lands. Like, full stop. But you know, whatever. That's
I'll say this. It's a thing of feeling as well. I think for me, my decks, I know that I need or are running too many lands based off of feeling. You know what I'm saying? Like
that's true.
I just bring up my recent Satya list. I started the list off on like 27 lands because I'm like, for my harder mid range, I need 28. I'll start 27. I felt that I was missing land drops that were critical to help me push advantage, to go Esper into Satya, double trigger Esper, and all these other things. Like, I needed one more land. So I went ahead and dropped a 2-mana rock for a land. Deck is purring like an angel. You know what I'm saying? But everything is, I think feel is like the biggest critical thing. And from what I'm feeling from this, bro, tell me what you keep and tell me what you pitching, because this feels good. I don't feel like we're only running 24 lands. I feel like we're running the right amount of lands, bro. Talk to me.
Yeah, and this is a weird one because, as strange as it might seem, I actually do think that we put the Sink into Stupor back, even though the other 2 lands seem like they have low agency. But the reason why is, just as a reminder, we are a Gush deck. You always have to keep that in the back of your mind. 100%. We are a Gush deck. We are a Daze deck. So if you can keep islands, it's pretty good. Sink into Stupor here is fine. You know, it's good that as utility, but that's not what this hand's trying to do anyways. Like, 100%. We're not trying to play slow or whatever and then just hold up a bounce spell. So Sink into Stupor goes back. And then the other card that goes back is, I guess, Dramatic Reversal.
I 100% agree. Yeah,
it's hard to know, because what happens if we top deck a crypt and then we're like, damn, I really wish we had the Dramatic Reversal, because then that totally changes the play.
Yeah.
But I would be curious what our draw is from there. So let's say we put the Sink and the Dramatic Reversal back. Yeah. What do we rip into?
If we top deck a crypt, then I'll take the blame for that. But no, you still got a Windfall. So either way, it's a win. It's a win. All right, let's drop.
Yeah.
The One Ring. It's a little slow. It's a little slow when it comes to, you wouldn't be able to see this card till turn 3, depending on what your top decks are. But we know we're going fetch into Lotus Petal. You just tell me what your game plan is now, knowing you've bottomed these 2 and you top decked a 1 ring. What are you thinking, brother?
So the first thing I do is I bitch and moan about how I had a mulligan of 5, and I'm against the top 3 best decks in the meta, and Proxy next, and God, I can never find what I'm looking for. Maybe I should go up on lands. And I know this sounds kind of crazy, but like that actually is a really big part of creating a space in which it makes it okay to then talk later or to not talk later. Because once I've now said this, even if people don't believe me, it doesn't really matter. It puts the vibe out there, and then I just shut up and say nothing for the next 1 to 2 turn cycles and see how things start to progress. It makes it really hard to keep a target on my back. And I'm the first player in seed order, which alone puts a target on your back, right?
100%.
Like you get to do things before everybody else. So for me, the way this looks is I bitch and moan, then I crack I play Prismatic Vista and crack it. This is pretty important. You do play the Lotus Petal, and the reason why is because if there's ever a world where this pod composition is a great example. If there's ever a world where you want to be worried about Mystic Remora and Heuristic Study, it's a pod like this.
Yeah.
So that Lotus Petal and Esper Settle too. This Lotus Petal could potentially represent 3 to 4 card draws for my opponents if I'm trying to be greedy with it about Dockside or something else, and I hold it.
Bro, take the damn treasure, bro. I'm not trying to give y'all cards. Yeah, take the treasure. You get 1 more treasure, yay. And I can crack this if my bad for cutting you off, but I'm like, in the event that Dockside makes 5, and I'm like, I have to choose between giving you Adnaz mana or just cracking it and floating mana, I'll just crack the Lotus Petal. Like, it's not a permanent source of artifact. So it's like, yeah, bro, I agree 1,000,000,000%. I agree, yes. 1,000,000,000%.
Yeah, the other thing too is like people really aren't on Chalice. Like that's just like not, but obviously not in this pod, no one's on it, but like in general, people really aren't on Chalice, like at all. I think there's some Derevi lists on Chalice, and like obviously some super heavy Stax lists on Chalice, but it's just like not a common card anymore.
Yeah, it's more of the Stax list, or like you'll definitely see it in like the colorless list, like the Liberators and whatever not. But it's more of like if I can, if it's greater than my colors, or which is colorless, or if it's like I really need an impressive turn 1 Stax piece, then that's when you're mostly seeing it. So it's kind of like it's like potato. But
I registered that Liberator list for the record in a tournament, and I don't know how people win with that deck, man. One of my homie D Mage really took strides with it, and I'm not gonna lie. In this recent set, there were like 2 to 3 sets. So much good stuff.
It's gotten so much good stuff. I will not be surprised if we see a Liberator top 16 within the next 6 months. Not because
that'd be awesome.
I think it doesn't need a pilot. It needs a community, which it has, but it just, some people are as a group of like 10 very ferocious people who love it, and there's a big 100 people community, but 10 people is like, we're pushing this deck as hard as we can. I think that's all it needs, because right now, like, it had its hype, it's instant speed, it's cool, but then I don't know if the same Liberator pilots are still running it, because it's still colorless and it's hard to play colorless. So, but excuses are tools of incompetence that build monuments and nothingness. Those who use themselves amounts to anything. So no excuses, guys. Make your deck work, Liberator.
That's awesome.
You said
what? Spit that out so fast. That's just like in your back pocket, man. Jeez.
Oh, 1,000,000%. Awesome. That's called. I've been online for fraternities before. It's just, you just learn certain things that just ingrain in who you are and make you. I don't even like to say make you, but they do make you a better person. Like understanding, like, what is making an excuse honestly going to do for me? Nothing. Oh, okay. Well, then I'm going to make this mono red commander take a top 16 over your Fire Dancer. Or, oh no, like, everyone, like, I can make excuses about, well, everybody's saying this about this deck. Well, I want to build a Marnie's deck that just generically draws cards. I don't want to do a token strategy. So I'm going to stop making excuses and just be me and be great. You know what I'm saying? So stuff like that. But I digress. I could talk about that all fucking day. I love this. I love this 5 we kept. Everything is. I wish we had the Urzas to push the 1 ring out, but at the same time, we're trying to win by turn 3. So we may not even touch that 1 ring until we're trying to storm off, probably, right?
Yeah, and maybe it doesn't even matter because we're gonna windfall turn 2.
Oh, true. Yeah, true. Yeah. That makes sense. All right. Well,
Yeah, I mean, that's a cool part about this. Like we were saying, is we get to pivot. We get to pivot to what we need and what's good. And these were rough mulligans, right? Like these were not, you know, these are not really what you're hoping for in a deck like this, and that's okay. That's part of variance. Like you're not going to get god hands all the time. And in fact, a couple of the hands I mulliganed to 4. Yeah, I mulliganed to 4 or 5 in that final pot of that most recent tournament. Like that's just gonna happen. Like and I like that about this deck, is that it doesn't feel like we talked about before, you don't need this one single card. You just need some mana, and then the rest of the deck does its thing. It cantrips to victory. So
no, I'm gonna be honest, they really weren't too rough. It was really more of like, this pod is too fast, or this one player in the pod is too fast for me to run it. Honestly, the first 2-7, especially the second 7, like I'm looking like they both had potential. They were like maybe one card away from being like, I think we should keep this. Like it was just literally how we talked about at the very beginning, pod dependent, but they worked and they got the job done. Like, so yeah, I'm not mad at this, but let's see one more hand. I'll roll the D8 again. Let's see. Okay, it's your lucky day. You got a 1, so you're going first again, because it's your deck. You're mono blue. You're the best color in the entire format, so you're going first. But this time, we have a Jetmir going second. We have a blue farm, because everyone plays blue farm. There'll be a blue farm going third, and then fourth we have Italian. Okay, so we have. Nice.
I love Italian. I love being in pods with Italian in this deck.
Dude, I love cloning Italian. Oh my god.
Yep.
Like I'm gonna be honest, like I'm like, y'all don't understand. People love playing against you because you're gonna drop a turn 1 to 3 Italian consistently, and we're gonna clone the fuck out of it. But neither here nor there.
And I'm on 10 clones. 10% of my deck are clones. Straight up, actually more than 10% of my.
That's what I was about to say. Like no cap. So let's see this. Let's draw. Let's see our first 7. Okay, we have an Ancient Tomb, a Gemstone Caverns that's a little sad, but we also have a Sink into Stupor, a Consider, a Preordain, a Cataxian Probe, and a Fairy Mastermind. How you feel?
It was Jetmir, Blue Farm, Italian. I for sure keep this. Ancient Tomb is just like a secret all-star in the deck, like full stop. Consider and Preordain and Git Probe mean that this hand can turn into literally anything. Like essentially, if I go turn 1, let's say the card I draw off the top is bad. Like let's say it's an island. Okay. And I go turn 1 island. I can go island and I don't even have to play it. First I Git Probe somebody, and then I get to see another card. Then I play the island and I Preordain, and I get to see 3 more cards. I get to scry 2, and if I don't like any of those, then I just draw the next one. And that's just that turn. Then the following turn, I can either go Ancient Turn, play my commander, go from there, or I can, if I want to continue to push, like let's say I hit a Mana Rock, I get Mana Rock, play my commander, then play a Sink into Stupor into a Consider, and continue to cantrip off. Like this is kind of showing the power of this deck, which is that you play so many cantrips that all these little small cards are storm vehicles into building into other cards that you do want.
Yes, early game, as you just explained, we're pushing us into more of a game plan, however we want to build it. We have a draw engine with Fairy Mastermind, which is great against TNK and Italian. Maybe we just make that very clear. Not to mention it's a flying blocker just for Jetmir in case for some weird reason that they're not hitting the ad-nons player and they're just saying, no, I've seen TTC's deck tech, I'm gonna hit you first. You know, whatever the fuck reason. You have a blocker you can push out as early as turn 2. It's like, I think it's very flexible. Like, so we want to keep this first 7 and see what the draw is.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll keep it first 7. We locking it in for drop. What the? Hey, you psychic, brother. What the fuck?
Was it an island?
It's an island, bro. It's a fucking island.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So
sorry, I'm following on the stream and it's a little behind, but yeah. Okay, no nice. Problem. Yeah. Of course, it's an island. That's so funny. Okay, so now we got to play out a little bit more in order to wrap our heads around it. So I'm gonna get Probe for free. So let's see the next draw.
Who we get Probe?
And of course, we look at the. Yeah, I was gonna say, of course, we look at the either the blue farm or the Italian hand. I think I go blue farm because I care more about like how broken their start is. Yeah, makes sense. So we'll get Probe. We look at their hand. Oh, it's 5 lands and a Dockside and Underworld Breach. I know it's not like that, but whatever. Not. Ooh, shit. Whoa. Sapphire Medallion. Oh, that's super spicy. And this is why we don't play the land out first, because now we don't even need to play these cantrips now. We get to set up for such a busted turn too. So now we just go Ancient Tune, Sapphire Medallion, pass the turn. and cards in hand is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It would be 6 cards in hand.
Yeah,
so you're fine. You don't even have to discard anything.
Oh, just for
and
fun.
Then you go to the next turn.
Yeah. Just for fun. I just got to see how this cookie crumbles. Draw for next turn. Misty Rainforest. Talk to me. What's the next thought process?
You for sure play the Misty and well, okay. You don't play the Misty first. What do you have in play? You have Sapphire Medallion and Ancient Tomb. Okay, yeah. So you do play the Misty and you crack it.
Right.
And then you. It's kind of tough actually.
Because we
so
don't.
It would really depend on
head,
what's been played.
A little hurting on blue pips, and of course we don't know the opponent, but it makes
right. Yeah. So let's say. Sorry. Yeah. I just was gonna say. Yeah. Let's say for whatever reason, and this is likely, there are 1 to 2 card advantage engines on board by the time we come around back to our second turn.
Right.
Then that is for sure where I want to hold up the mana for a Fairy Mastermind. So I probably just play a Misty Rainforest, don't crack it past the turn, and then that gives me the opportunity to, when someone goes to do it to card draw, I flash in the Fairy Mastermind. I get an on-board permanent way to continue to build advantage and get a draw in real time.
Yes.
Like when someone draws their second card. But if that never happens, I still don't just like lose out on tempo. I get to play the Consider, and this also takes a bunch of pressure off the table from thinking I'm going to storm off, because it's like I've had this super slow start, and this is again where I'm like, oh man, another land, and then I flip over. I purposefully show the table that I'm in hand. I have 3 lands or whatever. Like these are things that I actually do in real games.
Yes,
where I
no,
would just
100%,
information
100%.
And be like, I just have a bunch of lands and cantrips. Like fuck this, whatever. And that's when people will be like, well, why did you play your commander? And I'm like, well, I need to find some sort of card advantage. So I was going to Consider. I just figured it makes more sense to do it on your end step. And you can kind of then build into sculpting the hand that you want. And once we do play the commander and then preordain, or play the commander and then Consider, like on the same turn, that there is a world where we now hit into free counterspells or hit into mana rocks or nothing, but have enough of a board state that we just get to fill. We play enough free counterspells and interaction that like now our Daze is online, now our Gush is online. Like that's where we can kind of like go off from there. It's hard to do it in this setting to see what our draws would be, like how to sequence them. But like if you just kind of draw like 2 or 3 more cards and kind of look at what's coming down the line, it will really probably give you a good idea of like which way the deck or which way the game would play out.
Right. 100%. No, but that makes 100%. And I thank you for explaining the politicking side of a thing, because that is something that I was talking, I cannot remember his name right now, but I play him in the cEDH Discord now and then. He plays the Hada. And he said to me the other day, I'd never say never when it comes to revealing your hand, because there is a thing where I didn't say never, but it was like, I'm not a fan. I enjoy hidden information, but I'm finding it's such a powerful tool to just like, I'll drop a turn 1 or turn 2 Rhystic Study. The rest of my hand is bullshit, but my opponents don't know that. And there's a Roxai or some other Turbo Thassa's deck on the board, and it's literally the thing of like, I'm like, look, as I'm drawing the cards, I'll be like, oh shit, there's another land. I'll just reveal it to the table and put it on the table and like reveal it to the top. It's like, it's another land. I'll just keep revealing things, because just like, what am I hiding these cards for? They're dog shit. They're bad.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what am I gaining from? Ooh, you don't know my counters, but I know, like, out of every, like, you're not gonna win on turn 2. I know the next player's not gonna win on turn 2, and I know y'all are not in colors that can stop this player from winning on turn 2. So I need you all to feel comfortable feeding me and not feel like y'all are handing me the game, because I keep revealing lands. And whether the last 1 or 2 cards in my left hand was a counterspell or not, I still need to get past these lands and into the counter magic to stop this player, or get past these lands into the progressive pieces to help get me into the game. So I think revealing cards is not, I'm not going to say like you need to do this when cEDH tournaments. I think it's a tool that the same way you have a hammer and a screwdriver is 2 different things. You need to understand when to use your hammer of hidden information. I'm about to bash you with this shit when you don't come see it coming, or just like slow and steady wins a race. I'm just screwing this in. Oh shit. Nah, lands and cantrips, guys. I guess I fizzled out. All right, y'all. I hope y'all got some blue farm. And now blue farm knows you don't have counter magic as a mono blue player, but you already are not trying to control the table. So it's them knowing you don't have counter magic. That just serves you even more. So I love this. It's very. I love your explanation of how to actually win with this hand. Whereas now people are not, man, I just had cantrips in hand. I didn't know what to do. I kept losing and people just targeted me for no reason. It's like, well, did you let people know you didn't have shit? It's like, no. I'm like, well, that's probably why. You know, so I absolutely love your application there. Yeah.
And it's, to your point too, you know how it was like, I don't know, at least it was this way for me. The moment I realized that my life total was a resource, like very early on when I was learning how to play Magic, and I was like, oh, I don't need to block every creature that's trying to attack me. Right?
100%.
Like just in very like dumb terms, you know, goblin versus elf kind of thing. It's like, no, it's okay to go to 19. It's okay to go to 10. It's okay to go to 4. Like, because 4, you can still win the game. As long as you're alive, you can still win. And it's a similar thing, I think, with revealed information, where it's like, this is a resource, it's a tool. And sure, you don't want to do it all the time, but I think people don't do it enough, to your point. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, especially in the multiplayer format. There's not a universe where you'll do it in 1v1, but the minute it becomes a 1v1v1v1, there are a lot of times where you need to get the table on your side. And that's not just learning how to speak to people, about your tone and how your word choice, so you're not coming off as a dick. Because if you're being a dick, no one's gonna fuck with you and no one's gonna want to work with you. It's just psychology. Like it's just a fact. Call this, it is what it is. But also understanding of like, look, I'm not being a dick, but at the same time, these guys are not stupid. I'm not playing against novices. I can't get one over of them. And so they could probably see the potential of a handful of cantrips, but at the end of the day, they're never going to know my deck as well as I do. So this monocolor Rionia or this monocolor Geralf deck, where people are just unsure about where it can go, at least they know that I'm not pushing, that my hand is not revealing a win in hand. You know what I'm saying? And so it gives you that slack to be able to catch back up to those decks that may have the more broken cards, the Rhystic Studies, the Esper Sentinels, the Smothering Tides that we may not have access to. Granted, we have Rhystic Study, but the other broken engines that we don't have access to in just the mono blue color. But we can still catch up. We can steal that shit later. Shit, I'm pretty sure we're not too far from still enchantment, brother. So yeah, man. I want to just close out and say, bro, thank you so much, Holden, for giving us this deep analysis. I was very unsure of all the intricacies and lines, but I am very confident now that you definitely know your shit and you have explained it very well. So anybody who sees this list, please take the time to join the TC community and just talk to Holden. Like, honestly, he's very loves to talk. I don't want to spoil it too much, but he has some new brews that he's working on within the Izzet spheres. Like, so many great things. We have a lot of great pilots just like Holden, who honestly, we all just want to have a good time to talk. It's a no judgment free zone. We're not one of those communities who's just in there like, that sucks, that's bad. And if people do say something like that, please know I'm talking to them like, bro, we're not talking like this. Like, we're not trying to keep it real. We're trying to like let people brew and be creative for 10 seconds. So I just want to say, I appreciate your creativity. Like, if I were to say anything, that the cards that are my favorites inclusions were these bouncers, you know what I'm saying? The Shrieking Drake, the Sidisi's Faithful, and the Dreamstalker. Being able to use those, like, honestly, like, just being able to use these as combo pieces. Like, the only other deck that I'm seeing Shrieking Drake is Alondo, you know what I'm saying? But outside Alondo, we never see this card, you know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to say I thank you and I honor you for just coming on and just giving us this amazing deck tech, bro. Thank you so much, brother.
Yeah, right back at you. Appreciate the opportunity, and anytime we get to, showcase what the people out in Tucson are doing with cEDH, I'm all about it. And I will very strongly second what you said about your Discord. I'm in a lot of Discords, and I just the other day was in one, and I'm not gonna put them on blast because that's not my style, but they said something. I offered an insight about possibly doing things this way, or just hey, have you thought about this? And there was somebody who just immediately kind of snapped off at me, and my response back wasn't rude or anything. I was just like, hey, I don't appreciate the way that you said that, and I was really just trying to provide some additional context. And stuff like that just doesn't happen in your Discord. The people are very open-minded. They're very willing to work on stuff together. And yeah, I just really want to second what you said. It's a cool community for sure. So if anybody's out there listening and you haven't joined, just join the Discord, jump in and say hi and let us know what you're working on.
100%. And the more great brewers we come together, and the more people who just come in with just an old mind, that just makes all of our decks better, bro. Like, I had a guy the other set comment on one of my videos, was like, bro, you're too bubbly to be playing competitive. I'm like, what? I'll take it as a compliment, but he was like, nah, bro, like, do your thing. Like, he's just like, he wasn't used to someone being this positive, but at the same time being cutthroat. And I feel the same thing when I come towards you. Like, you're a very positive dude. Like, you know, at least I haven't heard you say anything negative. Like, we can joke about, oh, green sucks, but like, okay, look, we know people know we're joking. We know there's powerful green cards that even with the new printing of 6, like, green is getting this love, but at the same time, we know like there's a difference between being negative for the sake of bringing people's energy down, and there's a sake of like, hey, I'm making a joke in the heart of heart. If you love green, play green. And that's what we want to do here. Like, not just in the TC community, just in cEDH in general. And whether it's the ThunderConductor community or you take this energy to your own community, I want to encourage you all, just keep an open mind. Now, I'm not saying be a yes man, but be a yes and. Okay, yes, I hear what you're saying. And in addition, did you think about this? Like, did you think about, hey, like maybe,
oh, I like that.
You know what I'm saying? Like, instead, like, yeah, like maybe like I see you're trying to like force in these maybe like more powerful draw engines like the distant melody, but like, have you tried cantrips? No, we don't play those in cEDH. Like, I hear you, but you're in mono blue, so have you thought about the power of being able to shred to your deck? Because when like lean to your strengths instead of trying to force yourself to be a multicolored deck, lean to your strengths. You know what I'm saying? And then you can meet somebody like Holden and be like, check out my Dune oh my gosh, my Dune popcorn bucket deck. Like, look, it ranks in tournaments as well. It uses a lot of cantrips. A similar thing is done with the Teferi list. We use a lot of cantrips to shred through the deck once we start untapping and tapping things. So like that kind of mindset is what moves you forward. And so like, I'm very grateful to you. I just wanted to say that, like, I love your creativity in the community. It's very, very much, it's a thing that's not taken. Welcome to the community, brother. No, I just definitely want to take the time to say it's noticed, and I'm very grateful that you come with that energy. I thank you, brother. So I just want to say that.
Heck yeah, man. I mean, even when we were just on the stream alone, you've had some follows. You had somebody join the Patreon, I think I saw earlier.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that stuff is so cool. It's so cool to see, like, positivity breed more positivity. So yeah, exactly. Right there with you, man. It's awesome. Really appreciate the opportunity.
No, 100%. So my last question is, hey, brother Holden, if you have one more anything closing remarks you have of why people should check out Geralf the Flesh. I'm gonna say it, Fred, but Geralf the Fleshlight. We're gonna run with it. We're gonna say Geralf the Fleshwright. Is there any like closing remarks that you say why this is the most powerful 3-mana, most powerful blue deck? Honestly, potential to be one of the most powerful metal busting decks in all of cEDH. Just give us some closing remarks on that, brother.
I think probably like the biggest takeaway for me is it's just really well positioned against mid-range hell. I mean, you have all these clones. People play lots of really high quality cards. You have your own niche strategy that you're trying to do, of course, which is super fun, exciting, and that's another reason to play it. But you get to clone all their effects. And then on top of that, you get to play lines that other people don't understand and they don't see coming. And like we talked about, you turn the corner, now it's too late. So for me, it's definitely like a sleeper build. If you like the Brewer's Advantage, you like commanders you can cast off a single Jeweled Lotus, you know, this is really that deck for you. And if you also like a bit of a challenge, I mean, we're playing mono blue. There's only so many cards. And it's really fun to be able to beat people and say, you know, hey, how was that 5-color pile over there, bud?
You gotta give him the playful jab after you win, bro. Just a playful jab, like, yeah, how's that 5-color good stuff out doing you now, brother? Okay.
Yeah.
No, bro, thank you so much once again. I honor and respect you, and I'm looking forward to playing some games, bro. But I have to say to everybody else, if you're looking for more ways to support the show, we have a plethora. Starting off with our ThunderConductor proxies, it's my way to increase access to this amazing format that we call cEDH. We also have our ThunderConductor merch. I wear it's the softest, smoothest, cleanest merch on this side of the internet. Not to mention, we've been talking all about it, but join the ThunderConductor community. It's just free to join. It's no hassles, no nothing. Just join. Link at the bio. It's the Discord community. But if you want some extra perks, like having the chance to play games with us, to be able to just jam out, have a good time, get shouts on the Discord, on all our streams and our videos, and just have a good time, join the Patreon, aka the Thunder Legion. We be having a blast in there, and there's more and more perks that are coming down the line. Just stay tuned, y'all. I'm really excited for what we have coming. And last but not least, if you say, AT, I don't want the Patreon, the proxies, or the merch, I just want to say one time for the fun time, I love what you do and I want to support you. don't worry. Check out the link in the bio. You can buy me a coffee. It keeps me up and keeps the lights on. But with that being said, y'all be awesome, y'all be great, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.